Right, Dev, ready to go live?
Yeah, ready. I think.
Perfect. Go?
Yeah.
Lovely.
Go for it.
Hey, good evening. I'm Andy.
And I'm Devs.
Stay tuned.
It's Codes of the Unknown. Hello.
Good evening.
And welcome.
Oh, wait, sure if he's going to do that or not. So tonight we are joined by the wonderful Steve Mera.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that everyone knows a lot about him and who he is and so on and so on. So we shall just jump straight into questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yep. Nice for you to join us again.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. Yeah, it's been busy times, but always like doing the shows. Always interesting.
Yes.
I love hearing people's, experiences. That's the most thing. I mean, a lot of people ask me questions, but they don't tell me much about their experience. I'm always interested in those sort of things. So.
Yeah. So, Deb, do you want to jump first with your question?
I do. I want to know what your theories are on the Black Knight satellite.
Oh, that's really interesting.
What is it? Where does it come from?
It's funny you should ask that question at this moment because I've just finished a documentary, one of 30, which I've recently done with Billy Carson.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Now Billy's this in June. We've got a very special documentary coming out entitled "The Black Knight Satellite," and it's about the whole story, about the whole thing, and how did it come about? What's true, what isn't, that sort of thing. And it's very interesting because, when it comes to the Black Knight satellite, we had to kind of go back to the kind of story starts around the days of Tesla, to be honest with you. He went about 1886 or something like that. And he made some notes that because he was analyzing signals from high altitude storms, he claimed that he was picking up some sort of signal, which he believed could have been something which wasn't too far away, maybe around orbital of Earth. And of course, we know that in 1886 we didn't have anything up there in that time. But there were some interesting notes, which were made. Now, of course, when Tesla died, all his stuff was taken by the FBI and taken away. But to be honest with you, he was into really a lot of this free energy stuff, and of course, that's not going to go down well when you've got, big companies that want to actually, make a lot of money on this. So that kind of disappeared. It's starting, bits are starting to resurface now.
Yeah.
And then we jump forward to around about the days of the Air Force in the 1940s. And then there were some reports of an object that was being picked up, thought to be some type of satellite. However, we know when the first satellite went up into orbit, it was Sputnik 1.
Yep.
And according to data, it was supposed to have been tracked by another object. Now, how true is that? Well, we have to look at the Air Force documentation of what they've said over the years against other information, because there's a time scale of these events. I mean, we've got the 1940s, we've got the 1960s, the 1990s, and there's different things representing the Black Knight satellite. So first off, biggest question about this is where it gets its damn name from, the Black Knight. Well, we can't find out, to be honest. That's probably one of the biggest mysteries about the Black Knight satellite, is the fact that its name.
Right.
It is assumed that it might have adopted the name from the old 1930s film about the Black Knight, a medieval film where a mysterious figure dressed in Black Knight would come to the challenge of chousing, and of course would win the best men, and nobody knew who this person was, and off he went. It was a big mystery as to who it was. So maybe the Black Knight name came from that type of thing, but it's really unknown, to be honest. However, in the 1940s, the Air Force said it was one particular thing. Don't worry about it. It can't be anything unusual because we haven't got satellites up there. But then by the time we get into the 1960s and they started coming across more information that was being put out there, they actually came up with the theory that, well, it was a Discoverer rocket that went up there, which was part of a NASA rocket into orbit, and it's part of the staging. It's part of a piece of that material from the Discoverer rocket that had been caught up in the atmosphere of around planet Earth in an orbit. But the orbit was apparently, interestingly enough, a polar orbit. Now we don't really have many polar orbits of any satellites back then, because a polar orbit is basically purposely created and put in there to monitor Earth, to scan the Earth.
Yeah.
Because the Earth is rotating roughly just over 1,000 miles an hour, and you put it in a polar region, it's going around the Earth like this. Well, you can imagine the Earth is spinning this direction, and you're going around it this direction. You're going to be basically scanning every single time going around the planet a different area of the planet. So it's anything in polar orbit is designed to monitor, to scan. We have some satellites up there now in polar orbit for geological purposes because it's scanning all of planet Earth.
Yeah.
It makes the whole process a lot easier to do that because the Earth spins on the particular axis north to south. Now, they were saying it was a Discoverer rocket. However, when it came to NASA in the 1990s and some of the more interesting photographs, they were saying, well, this is part of the International Space Station. It's actually a part of the blanket material of part of the ISS, which had got away and floated off. And every now and again, astronauts, when they're up there on the shuttles, they're seeing it and they're photographing it. And I think they released about 20 odd different photographs. Now, this object is tumbling. You've got to remember that. It's not just moving like this through space. It's tumbling around in all sorts of ways. And every time you take a photograph, it's tumbling. It's like every photograph, it looks a little bit different.
Yeah.
But some people have managed to take certain photographs and it looks, let's pick that photograph because that looks the real menacing one. Looks a little bit like a ship or something.
Yeah.
You've gone to town on that. But the story has it is as we progress, is that they're not actually one of these objects that are in polar orbit, but actually two. And there's a lot more information that's come out in regarding unusual signals which have been received. And we have to question, is there possibly something up there which is ongoing? To me, I mean, NORAD, they scan and measure everything that's in orbit. There are thousands and thousands of these satellites in orbit now, including bits that have just dropped off things, an astronaut's glove and all sorts. And they are monitoring these things on a regular basis. They can pinpoint them. I would assume if it was an ancient satellite in the orbit or polar orbit of Earth, they probably would have retrieved it by now.
Yeah.
They absolutely. Yeah, wouldn't just leave it up there because there's people now with some really great telescopes. You can go down to the shop, spend about a real 4 or 5 grand, bring home a massive telescope and tune into the skies yourself and see this thing, take photographs. So I don't think, you know, with the technology that we can lay our hands on now, that you do just leave this floating around in orbit. So there always is a counter argument. But I have to say, there are some interesting things that have come forward regarding profound and unusual signals that I assume to have been picked up from close to Earth and close proximity. But the question is where those come from. We do not know. There's a bit of a mystery surrounding them. But there's a lot of data. I mean, I'm not going to go into it too much because there's this documentary coming out. But it's a fascinating story how did the Air Force, why did the Air Force say it was a Discover rocket when NASA later turned around and said, well, no, it's not. It's a piece of the ISS. It's as if like there was conflicting information between NASA and the Air Force. And if that is the case, then why is that? Or was there more than one piece of these things? There was a piece of Discover. There was something else. It gets very complicated, you know. And then just to add to the mix, the problem comes when somebody comes forward and wrote a book who claims, according to his book, that yes, it's an ancient satellite, and it's not near Earth, it's near the moon, and it's 13,000 years old. But this was based into a book which wasn't factual. It was, you know, it was just a story. It was more science fiction, and people took that little piece out of this book about this science fiction aspect to it and started applying it to the original story. So everybody got all confused. But it is interesting, and I have to say, I mean, there are stray, unusual signals which have seemingly been caught over long periods of time at a point when we didn't have the technology to produce signals from outside of planet Earth. So we have to question what truly is the Black Knight satellite. Is it still up there? I don't know. But there's some interesting positive arguments, and there's also some interesting negative arguments to it as well.
Does it not predate the ISS, though, that the sightings, do they not? So they couldn't have dropped off?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, if you just look at the Air Force Commission documents in regarding what their explanation, what that was, and they said it was part of the Discovery, which predates ISS, absolutely. So it couldn't have been that. But then, you know, in the 1990s, it was, you know, they said it was the part of the ISS. So it's as if, like, if it is the same object, then they're getting mixed up, you know, or we deal with more than one object. But to be in a polar regional orbit is a very precision technique. You don't just, you know, very hard to just randomly throw something into a perfect north-south polar orbit of Earth. It takes a little bit of control and stuff like that. And now with the latest story with Avi Loeb, who's come forward, who did the analysis on a very unusual asteroid that came into near planet Earth a few years ago, Amanga, I think it was called, or something like that. Very unusual name, but it was very long, elongated. But what was interesting is that it repelled away from the sun. As it passed the sun, it should have gone in towards the sun. It didn't. It pushed itself away.
Right.
Which, it was seemingly intelligently controlled to some degree. Or it was made of something which we don't have any idea of, that would repel itself away from stars, from heat, from energy. But it's very interesting because this particular object isn't a notable object that we know to come around every so often. This came into our solar system from outside, and it's took an unusual path and headed back out. So we're kind of thinking now, okay, well, maybe there is evidence that some things are out there and might be producing signals which we could pick up on.
I find it really interesting. Some of the photographs, like you say, they look like they've been sharpened so much that it's made it look like a different object.
It does, because it's tumbling all the time. I think NASA released about 20 odd photographs. And you go through the frames, and as you go through the frames, you can see how it looks like different shape. In fact, you both and say that's not the same object, but it is. It's just like it's tumbling in motion. And what they generally do is someone will grab the best one. That one's in because it looks something strange. And that's the one that tends to get the notoriety through the magazines and the newspapers and on the internet. You really have to look at the whole picture, the whole series of photographs that NASA took. And evidence that they pointed to this particular object being part of the inertia blanket system off the International Space Station, which apparently when they were constructing it, it got away and off it went, so. But who's there's still a big mystery behind it.
Yeah. See, I didn't know that it was tumbling until you just said that. I just thought it was like guided. It was doing its own.
Yeah, like an orbit.
Like,
It is on a perfect rotational around planet Earth. But as it rotates, it's twisting.
It's just going every direction.
So it depends on when you photograph it. You're going to get something different. I mean, we have satellites. I mean, people say to me quite often, I thought it was a satellite I was filming, but it was going on and off. And satellites don't go on and off. I said, well, actually, some of them do. There's no lights on these satellite systems.
No.
Reflection of the sun on the side of them because they're very, the shiny material. And even when the sun's set, from up at that height, it's catching the sun at their height, but not at our height. So we can see them at night. And if you follow them, eventually they'll kind of dim out as they lose the reflection from the sun. But there are some satellites up there which are black on one side and silver on the other.
Right.
And the idea is because it's trying to regulate the heat inside those satellites because of certain equipment. Certain equipment has to operate around about, say, between 70 and 80 degrees. Yeah. That's how it works best. So to maintain that temperature, because on the black surface as it comes around, it's going to get very cold. Or heat up, should we say. And then on the shiny surface, it's going to repel the heat and be very cool. So just to keep it tepid, half of it's black and half of it's silver. So as it's moving through space around planet Earth, it's turning. And as it's turning, we see that reflective side flash at us every night. Of course, this is what's referred to as the thermal rolling satellites. There's several of them up there. People do misidentify them, but they're put purposely into a continuous spin, just to regulate the temperature heat inside them.
Yeah. You don't think about stuff like that, though, do you? You just think of them being up there and floating about, and you don't actually think of all the bits and pieces that have to go on.
Well, I mean, I'm always looking at pieces of video people send me, and I'm trying my best to try and identify what they're actually witnessing. Sometimes it's just that people don't know that there are some things up there. I mean, we've got the Starlink satellites now, which is from Elon Musk, and there's I think there's about 50 of the darn things now in a line. Yeah. And people keep saying, "Oh my God, what is all these things?" And these we're going to be seeing more and more of these as time goes on because it's what you refer to as a train of satellites. There's loads of them moving, in a row. Very strange to see, but rational explanation.
Because he just wants a full, complete circle of them, doesn't he? Eventually,
yes.
A full chain going right around the Earth.
The idea is to have all this instant communications around the planet, so that in other words, we can communicate with Australia from the UK exceptionally well because we've got this connectivity around the planet. Fantastic idea. It's going to take some time to go around the whole planet, but I mean, if we look what's going to be happening over the next 20, 30, 40 years, communications are going to be astronomical, really astronomical.
Yeah.
It's amazing what they can do now.
Yeah, it is.
Like you said, imagine what they can do in 20 years.
And that's the stuff we do know, not the stuff we don't know.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
the stuff they're not telling us.
That's it.
There's a lot more they're not telling us than what they are telling us.
Exactly.
Eventually it'll filter down. Probably in about 40, 50 years or so, we'll get to
past our lifetime.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's going to go on for a long time, this.
Yeah.
Right. We'll go to the first question then. So this is from Joe Weeks. What does Steve think about what does Steve think the bloop sound is?
The bloop or bloop?
Bloop.
I know it says bloop. Is that right? Is that what I refer to it? Not the bloop? Okay, because there's a blurb and a bloop. Two different things slightly. One was the blurb is the one that's under the water. Which was unidentified. It's travelled masses and masses of miles through the ocean, which was a very strange signal, which was picked up by oceanic scientific equipment, which was being monitored by the Navy at the time. Or we have these very strange, unusual sounds from space. We're always getting them. In fact, do you remember back from the 1980s, the wow signal got some setting? Now, they're actually reanalyzing that now, because now we have the technology to pinpoint the direction of where that wow signal came from.
Right.
And we know the location of where it comes from now. You know, just we had to wait for specialized equipment to be able to triangulate and all that now. But now we have that technology. We can dig the file back out and say, okay, what else can we learn about the wow signal? Because it was very unusual. And it's coming from a part of space which we can identify now, which could sustain, because the stars there could sustain planets like our own, which is also very interesting. So did we randomly get a signal from some distant other planet? Yeah, because like I say, we tend to know now what some of the anomalies we find in space that do produce sound signals, such as pulsar stars. They're like a lighthouse, you know, and as it's spinning, it's like a beam of light that comes and it pulses and it makes a sound, and you can hear this, you know, as a frequency. But we know what those things are. We can, you know, we're now the 21st century. We know what these things are. We can identify them very easily. But when we've got these very unusual sounds coming from different locations in the solar system, we have to question the source. Now, the first thing is that we have to question is that how strong the signal comes in.
Yeah.
Because the stronger the signal would seemingly mean that it's nearer to us, because it degrades as time goes on. So the further away, the lower it gets.
Yeah.
When they're compounding through, you know that they're not too far away. And then we have to question, you know, what's in that location? Can we pinpoint that location? And when we're pinpointing just a particular place in the Milky Way somewhere, then we have to question, all right, well, how does such a strong signal travel so far? Now, back in our days, how we used to deal with that when radio came out was we used to put it inside a carrier wave, because it was a carrier wave which was stronger. We used to carry the signal of the radio, and it was this big carrier wave, and in it is the radio. And we used to use the carrier wave because the radio frequencies were very good, but they weren't very strong. And we wanted to produce them in a way so we could get them out further to the listeners. So we put it into a larger carrier wave and distribute it. So in other words, that it managed to get the distance. It could be some type of technology like that is encased in other frequencies which are built for strength and purpose for carrying. There is a problem with that, and we have also lots of strange sounds that are being recorded all over planet Earth, especially over the last 5 to 10 years. Strange sounds from the skies and stuff.
Yeah,
it's quite a newish phenomena. And you know what? People initially thought it was something to do with biblical and the end of times, because there is references into the Bible about strange noises as Gabriel's trumpet.
Yeah.
Now, Gabriel's trumpet is supposed to be, you know, identify the coming ends of the end of days and all that sort of thing. And people started thinking, oh my God, it's the end of days, it's Gabriel's trumpet. Is it an unearthly natural sound? We don't know. Is it something more natural? We don't know. One thing we can say is that Earth is forever changing. Its environment is always changing. And of course, it may be conditions now that we've changed on planet Earth that might cause some strange acoustics to happen.
Yeah.
Because these sounds have been heard all over the world. And they're very, very similar, and nobody can seem to pinpoint them. Are they some strange atmospheric noises that, you know, is produced by, could be something to do with our technology, could be HARP, could be something else, who knows?
Yeah.
Because we are living in a world of technology now. Who knows what the side effects of that's going to be over a period of time? And we just don't know. It's just one of those mysterious sounds, you know. But blue blurbs, all sorts of different things have been investigated, and a lot of them I just don't have any rational explanation at this moment.
No.
So we find out more, yes.
I do find the trumpeting sounds a bit unnerving, though. They do have videos, and I'm like, oh no.
I know, and everybody says they're coming from the sky, which is really, really profound.
Have either of you two heard the trumpet sounds?
I haven't actually heard it. No. But what's interesting is that the data that comes back is that from different countries, there's different weather conditions that are happening at the time. So we know that's not directly associated with weather, because it can happen on a sunny day, it can happen during a storm.
Yeah.
It's not to do with wind wind direction, because, again, from these different reports, the wind's going in different directions. So we have to sort of look, is there something else taking place geologically? Or technologically, which is going on, which we're unaware of, which could be causing those, attributed to those noises. But I tell you, they are a little bit strange when you hear them.
They are.
Yeah, bit freaky.
Creepy.
Yeah. Right, Deb, do you want to do the next question?
Yes. My next question is, which out of all the unknown phenomena do you find the most unsettling, and why?
That's a good question.
Put you on the spot there, Steve.
Well, believe it or not, you're going to be surprised at the response, but I would say some of the ufological stuff.
Right.
Now, most people will say, the paranormal and the demonic and occult and all those sort of things, because I've experienced this myself. Now I know that generally UFOs doesn't come so much like the UAP phenomenon. However, there are certain significant cases where it's been brushed aside, the trauma and the negative things that have happened, these experiences, brushed under the carpet, because there's a lot of people around the world that think that the UFO phenomenon represents love and light.
Yeah.
They're here to save planet Earth, they're here to save humanity, or to save us from ourselves, and all these wonderful, wonderful stories. However, there are spate of incidents that get hushed up very, very quickly around the planet. The Colares UFO incident from off the shores of Brazil, small island called Colares, in 1977 and 78. Objects came from the sea, and over a space of about 3.5 weeks, they attacked the villagers. They shined down a very powerful beam of light, very thin, which they couldn't escape from. I mean, it penetrated the houses, it penetrated the roofs.
Wow.
And it hit them whilst they were sleeping in bed. These people suddenly woke up in absolute agonizing pain, and at the same time paralyzed. They couldn't. They just had to wait it out. Screaming and waiting it out. And it lasted for several seconds, and that's a long time when you're in agonizing pain. What was left was a puncture mark wounds, about 9 of them in a circular fashion.
Yeah.
And what was interesting is that because some of these people died, a lot of them were seriously injured and became ill, and lots and lots of them admitted to hospital for tests. And what they found is that nearly all of them, the iron content out of the body was taken. These objects, through this process, extracted the iron out of the body. So everybody was suffering adrenal weakness.
Yeah.
They just had no iron. They were anemic, and you could tell from the test results in hospital, there's no iron in the body. Where's the iron? It became extremely, extremely anemic. And what we found is that disturbs me, because when we go back to the ancient days and we talk about the gods from the skies and things, when we go back into ancient days, it was all about blood worship.
Yeah.
And what these ancient civilizations were doing, were offering up people to these deities and as sacrifices. Now, it sounds horrific, but even if you want to go through the Old Testament, it's there.
Yeah.
Even our own God from the Christian God in the Old Testament occasionally demanded blood sacrifice.
Yeah.
He had his bad days. I mean, it's smite Moses' brother because he wasn't happy with him.
Yeah.
And according to the Bible, I mean, he was also associated with blood worship, and they were doing this. But many ancient cultures and civilizations around the world were doing this with women at a time when they were going through the menstrual cycle, because they had a lot less iron in the body, which was very, very interesting. And then when we start to look around about the 1700s and Middle East, and we talk about the jinn. Now the jinn were warned away. The people there knew how to deal with jinn. Now jinn is just another name for the other aspects of paranormal things, which change its name and aspect through different countries, be it poltergeist, demonic, or whatever.
Yeah.
But they knew that they could somehow protect themselves to some degree by utilizing and wearing hematite. Now, hematite crystal is very, very potent amount of iron in it.
Yeah.
And apparently the jinn didn't like it. Apparently it does assist in some way. And then it's like move 100 years forward, and we find that in Norway and places like that, that farmers were banging iron rods into the ground round in the fields to protect the livestock at night from being taken or mutilated or whatever.
Yeah.
And they thought something evil comes in the night. It always has been. Nighttime is a whole different ballgame to daytime. Always has been.
Yeah.
And they knew that sometimes something really did at night, and we had to protect the livestock, which is what they used to do, how they used to work. And then we shift forward another 100 years, and then we look at in the ancient islands where we were protecting children from being abducted by placing iron across the cribs.
Yeah.
And then if you go forward even again a bit more, people started utilizing lucky horseshoes.
Yes.
There's nothing about luck in horseshoes. It was placed over doors to ward away the bad stuff.
Yeah.
Come in many shapes and sizes. Many shapes. In the ufological as well, it works in the ufological. Isn't that strange? And the paranormal and the supernatural. It's something about that we think it's something to do with the resonant frequency of iron. So when you move forward a bit more, medieval times, you started banging iron nails around beds to keep the bad dreams away, the negative dreams, the negative horror, terror tales, those sort of things. And that was being used. And we can even see it in modern day. It's in plain sight. When we go round and we look how churches and graveyards are separated by wrought iron fencing and gates.
Yeah.
It's still there. It's still there about the realms and realities, about positive and negative stuff. And we took that one step further into the abduction phenomenon. People who are having those type of experiences with these entities turn up, they really didn't like these experiences. We started introducing iron into the relationship here with the witnesses and the experiences, and it seemed to be a significant suppression. We started to think, okay, it's not only affecting the paranormal and supernatural, but it also adversely has this effect on the ufological side as well. So we knew that those combinations, there was some type of connection between them. And when I was out in Palm Springs, in the desert, up on the mountains, we knew that we were in the right location to have this particular experience.
Yeah.
And when this object just switched on, that's how I can explain it. It just went, whoop, and it was just there. And it was huge, it was colourful, it was beautiful. But the thing is that you've got to be aware of your surroundings. And it's the same in paranormal investigation. I would say to anybody, the best thing to do when going out on an investigation, be it ufological or paranormal investigations, is try and not eat or consume refined sugar for about 72 hours.
Yeah.
Because your fight or flight response, your natural senses, your survival sense, which we rely on so much, is nullified by this type of this refined sugar. It causes adrenal weakness, which means your adrenaline, that system that we rely on, that survival sense, isn't going to work properly. And when you just don't have it for just 72 hours, you can actually really see the difference. You'll feel the difference. Right. Now, that natural, our skin all over our bodies, this is because, I've been working with Barry Fitzgerald for quite some time from Ghostbusters. He's part of the team that we work together.
Oh, right, okay.
And when he talks about the skin, and it's true, the skin is the biggest organ we have on the body.
Yeah.
But it tells us stuff. It whispers to us all the time when we're out on the paranormal investigations. When you go into locations and suddenly all the hairs raise up, you get these bumps on you, like little
goosebumps.
Feel something. That is your survival sense. It's the skin reacting, telling you. That survival sense we come to rely on because it's telling us just because we don't see something, just because we don't hear something, it doesn't mean it's not there.
Yeah.
The mechanism, that survival sense we have, it's saying there is something there. It doesn't like it. It's warning you.
Yeah.
Now, you need to know that because when you're having these encounter type experiences and that kicks in, what you should be doing in many cases, instead of walking towards the phenomena thinking how fantastic it looks, is actually taking a few steps away. Your body's telling you this is not good. It's sending you the warning signals. Because while you're glamoured and looking at these beautiful objects, you've got to be aware what's going on behind you in the background.
Oh, yeah.
And what happened whilst we were up there, we were so transfixed on this phenomena, we were unaware that it was already on the ground behind us.
Wow.
And we had to hot tail it out of there. We had to. It sounds ridiculous, when this is happening, to hot tail it out. That's what we want to see. But we had to hot tail it out of there because everything just went into alert mode. It's like, oh my God, it's like, we don't know if we can trust the phenomenon. We don't know what to expect from it. Is it going to be a good experience? Is it going to be a bad experience?
Yeah.
A lot of people go into it blindly. Sometimes they end up having bad experience and wishing that they never got involved in it. Others not too bad. But like I say, you need that mechanism to rely on. So if you're going out paranormal investigating and you're going out sort of UFO hunting, what's the first thing people do? Well, they reach for the Coca-Cola or they take Mars bars with them. And the huge amount of refined sugar in them, you've just basically nullified. You basically, your skin will be telling you, but you won't be registering it because it's just nullified it.
Yeah.
Just keep away from that just for 72 hours. I tell you what, you really do feel it. You will notice the difference straight away. And when you're walking around in places, you can actually say, this is a problem location. I can feel it. I can sense it. It's my body telling me. And that's that survival sense. We've all got it still to some degree. But you know what? If we don't use it, we lose it, sort of a thing. And to me, I've become reliant on that. Barry taught me how to do that, how to become reliant. And I think that's an important thing. That was scary. It was scary because it's an unknown and there are warnings there. And if you can't register the warning, you're blindly walking into experience that you shouldn't be going into, And I think people have to be, to protect themselves in some way when going out because you don't know what type of experience you're going to have. No. I've sat, don't get me wrong, I've sat in these dark dungeons and they've said, oh yeah, there's demonic activity down there. And I go down there, sit in the dark, damp, cold, nothing happening.
Yeah.
I can sometimes just be walking down a country road at night and all of a sudden the shackles, whoa,
straight up.
Think, oh my God, this is, and that's because I've come to learn it. It's like a taste of a lemon. You don't forget the taste,
Yeah.
I'd say people need to rely upon themselves because that survival sense is still within us all. And there is caution no matter what you're dealing with out there, ufological, paranormal, supernatural, whatever. As very different variations. But I would say experiencing that firsthand and realizing that, I'm caught in the glamour. It's like the magician's hand. It's like this in the sky, but what's going on behind me is totally, I'm not there.
Yeah.
Until Barry sort of said, and then suddenly it went, whoa, and I thought, okay, because I didn't realize they were already on the ground behind us in the distance, and they were on the ground already. And we hot-tailed it out. We got out of there quick. I don't know what would have come of that experience. I've witnessed UFOs before, plenty of them, which I believe is some of them are the true phenomena. But when they put on these beautiful light displays, and this is a close encounter, it just appeared a huge thing in the sky, beautiful lights, and you kind of hypnotized. You kind of, oh my God, you're in awe.
You can't believe what you're seeing.
You can't. But whilst you're doing that and watching that, you've got to be aware of 360 around you all the time. And that's what scared me because I didn't realize until that moment in time how deceptive this phenomenon can be. and it can creep up on you without you knowing. I mean, if you go back on, if you look through YouTube at Robert Bigelow. Now, he had a scientific team known as the NIDS for 20 years investigating the stuff at Skinwalker Ranch. Now, his latest interview from February last year with George Knapp, who's a news guy from Las Vegas, he came out. He came out with it finally, and he said, basically in so many words, "I wish I'd never done it. I wish I never did the experiments. I wish I never went. I wish I wasn't involved, because there's a sting in the tail for some of this phenomenon, and it attached itself to him, and he went through a hell of life after that. His wife died, his son died, his granddaughter died, and it's just on and on and on. Everything that could possibly go wrong would go wrong. This streak of severe negativity and multiple serendipities kept happening. Enough to realize this is not normal. And then he started talking to the other NIDS teams, and there were other members from the NIDS team who had exactly the same thing. If you push too hard, you've got to allow this. If it's going to be communication, but if you start pushing too hard, and they were pushing too hard, because they were involved in what you might do, involved in invocational stuff, which shouldn't really been going on there much, but they were doing, because they wanted to do. There was an effort to try and get some understanding of what was responsible for some of this stuff, because it had a connection with the supernatural and the paranormal, and they prodded and pressed too hard, and it snapped back at them. And that's what it did. It invaded the lives, and it literally left ruined. And he wished he hadn't done that, and not just from him, from other members. So, like I say, you've got to be careful sometimes about how hard we push for this phenomena, and also be very cautious and be aware about how deceptive they can be. That's the scariest thing, because we're dealing with an unknown, which can be highly deceptive and can confuse you and glamour you, and and put you into a position before you know it, you're in it, and you don't know what happened. That's the confusing thing. That's the scary thing that can happen out there with dealing with phenomena, And I say that was probably, for me, realizing that things were already on the ground behind me, and I had no idea. If it wasn't for Barry, I would have had no idea they were behind me. I was too bloody glamoured by this object in the sky. He's like, luckily for him, he was right as well. And I was like, let's get out. Let's just get out of it. And we did. We hot-tailed it out. But if it wasn't for him, I was caught. I was like a rabbit in the headlights. No idea about my surroundings.
That's scary, is that?
Yeah.
It can be. That's probably one of the most nerving things I've experienced.
Yeah.
I think then next time I go out and do a live investigation, I'm not going to eat for 3 days.
No, eat.
But don't eat
all the chocolate bars and the Coke things with loads of sugar in.
All the snacky stuff.
You want to rely on your own system, Now, things with natural sugars are fine, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But do it, if you just do it for 72 hours, just do it once, you realise how you are like a radar when you go in those places, And it really does work. It really does work.
Yeah, definitely try that next time. So, cool. Deb, next you do view question?
Yes, yeah.
So we've got this one from Umbraman. What experiences from others does Steve find the most interesting?
Good question.
That's a good question. What do most interesting ones? I find cryptid interesting.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the reasons why, because it is, from my studies, it has an association. It has one foot in the paranormal camp. It has another foot in the ufological camp. And we assumingly that it is some type of creature. Now, there's been countless sightings of Bigfoot in the UK, and now that's just preposterous, I mean, I've even investigated some in built-up areas, in the local park, where people. And do you know what? I absolutely believe the witnesses. When they're sobbing and crying that they're witnesses, I absolutely believe them that they experienced something. Now, I don't know if these things are metaphysical in nature and they just seem to pop in from another reality and just to scare the living daylights out of people. But that would seem to be the case on many of these incidents. Now, if you are obviously those hard-nosed Bigfoot guys in America, and there is a possibility that a live creature like that could exist in these regions where man's not been, in the middle of thousands of miles of nothingness apart from man. There's always that possibility. We're always finding new things, which we thought we may have gone extinct. And but when we're talking about the UK, it's just, you only got to travel 53 miles in any direction. You're going to hit sea at some point. And it's just, it's kind of not feasible. But then there are people who have reported dogmen. If you take, for example, the location of Cannock Chase, for example, there's been sightings from people and witnesses which seem to be absolutely authentic about seeing these strange creatures. Now, I started looking into the research of these, and I was trying to figure out what the hell is it all about. And it seems that what they are fear feeders. They're like a parasitic action that's taking place. It's very similar to poltergeist stuff in a sense of speaking, because poltergeist phenomena generates phenomena on purpose for you to see it or experience it. And when you do, it causes you to get all upset and stressed, and that vexation cycle. And what it does is that it draws from the witnesses the amounts of emotional energy to create the next act of paranormal phenomena. And then they see it again. And then, of course, it's a vicious circle. It goes round and round and round. Well, in a sense of speaking, they're parasitic because they're taking that energies and stress and emotion from us to create the next act. So that's very much like a parasite. But when we looked into these cryptids, there was incidents where, for instance, 4 people are walking down some old train tracks to get shortcuts to sort of shops, and they see this thing come after them. This thing is about 7 foot tall. It's huge. It's got a huge build to it. It's hairy. It's running on 2 legs, and it has the head of a wolf. And this isn't a guy in a suit. This is a real looking creature, and it absolutely scared them to death. They ran for it. They ran for their lives. But you know what it's like when you're running down at night down train tracks. One of them took a tumble and fell over. The other 3 carried on for a while. And of course, this guy, we realized that by the time he sat up, in pain, of course, from falling, that this thing was on literally above him, stood next to him, growling and snarling, and he got a damn good view of this thing. This thing was huge. He said it was about 7 foot tall. Its width of its shoulders were most twice the size of his. It was very muscular upper body, slimmer from down, and dog legs, upright dog legs, a dog head, and a gaping mouth, and God knows how big teeth. He was he was so scared, he went into a freeze position. It's an ancient way. It's a very ancient way of how we used to deal with things when, in the old days, back in the days when saber-toothed tigers were around, we'd freeze.
Play dead.
Play dead scenario, because we think if we're not moving, he might not attack us. And that's what he did. He couldn't run away. Couldn't find enough energy to get himself off the ground. This thing's right next to him, so he freezes. But it's interesting at that point. These other 3 guys have stopped now and realised, hang on a second, because this thing's going to get our friend. And they start heading back towards it. They're geared a little bit up now, But this guy is lying there looking at this thing, and it's as if it didn't know what to do then. It's like, all this sort of thing. But suddenly, top of him, it's like, what? It doesn't attack him. It doesn't attack him. What it does is it kind of just looks at and then thinks, "Oh, I'm off," and runs away. Now we know any creature, any animal, predatory animal, reacts in certain ways. They all react in a certain way. When they go for the hunt, they go for it, and they keep going for it. Suddenly, if their prey suddenly stops, they're not going to run away, because they put so much energy into this that they'll go for the kill.
Yeah.
Because they're very clever, these any predatory animal doesn't want to injure itself, because predatory animals realize, I'm not going to get into a fight, I'm not going to overstep my mark, because if I get injured, I won't be able to feed myself. I can't feed myself, I die. And they know that sort of thing. So they're very clever how predators work. Now, this thing, he's took the chase, he's finally reached the prey, he's over it, he doesn't know what to do. It's like, so you know straight away, it's not about the attack, it's about the fear.
Yeah.
Because what these things want to do is generate so much fear in these individuals through the process of scaring them, not the act of attacking them. And that leads me to think it's a bit like the poltergeist phenomenon, because that's what the poltergeist phenomenon does. It wants to scare you, wants you to perform, wants to do paranormal things purposely, on purpose, so you can't mistake it. It won't move something over in the corner if it thinks that, well, I could have moved that accidentally myself. Maybe I did put it there. Oh, no. It's something that you identify and go, oh, my God, it's got to be paranormal. And that's what poltergeists do. They're very performing. You know, they're very resourceful. You know, they make sure that you're going to see something, you're going to be frightened by it. It's going to draw that energy to create the next game. Now, these parasitic type of phenomena, which we see in poltergeists, we see in cryptids, fear feeders. So you've got to think about, I mean, here's another scenario. It's an old wood cabin. The father comes home from work, he's tired out, goes upstairs for a sleep. He's got two children, a boy and a girl, around about 14, 15 years of age, and they see this thing coming towards the house.
Right.
And it's the strangest thing they've ever seen. It was like a strange, upright, walking creature. They don't know what it was, but it was big. And it started banging on the side of the walls of the cabin. I mean, they were absolutely petrified. But then they realized this thing's coming round to the door.
Yeah.
And what happens is that the door handle, this thing grabs the handle from outside and starts rattling it and going, ah. Now it's like scaring two young kids. It's all about the fear, it's all about the scare, and growling and making all this hell of a noise. The father, he gets up, comes downstairs, said, what the bloody hell's all this noise? The kids are going, Dad, don't go near the door, don't get near the door. And of course, he grabs the door handle and just flings it open. And it's this thing is stood there. And he stood there, and they're looking at each other. This is like a Mexican standoff in a Western movie. They're staring at each other. The father's like, doesn't know what to do. He's just amazed. Whatever this creature is in the same pose. It's like, what do I do now? What it does is it takes off. It just goes. It's all about the fear. It's all about. So I started looking into. I wonder if they're actually. What is the purpose of fear? What's going on in the body? You know. Well, there's all sorts of things. Adrenaline and cortisols are released and stuff. It's that fight or flight response. But there's something else that's happening, and I started thinking, what is it that they're feeding from? What's the kick out of it? What's the point of it all? And I thought to myself, I wonder if it's pheromones. I wonder if it's certain pheromones, fear pheromones. Now, I started checking into this because some scientists said, oh, no, we don't produce fear pheromones anymore. And we don't have the ability even to pick them up anymore. And I thought, no, not having that. And I dug out some tests that were carried out in scientific tests. And what they did is they got a group of people to identify patches as scent. Now, 6 of these patches were placed on the arms of basketball players. Right. The other 6 were placed on the arms of skydivers for the first time they were going to do it. And what they did is, because obviously one incident is a lot more fearful than another, they brought all these patches together and they asked them, these people, it doesn't sound very nice, does it? But they asked these people to smell them. You know, and what was really interesting is that people could identify the fear pheromone in the sweat glands. There is we do produce a fear pheromone. And it's notable. We might not be able to pick it up anymore, but there are fear pheromones. Maybe in our survival days, back in the day, when we were hunter-gatherers, maybe we could pick up the scent of an animal that was hiding nearby, because it would be producing a pheromone. It would help us down. So I started thinking, I wonder if it's down to a fear pheromone then. Are they just trying to gather those pheromones from us? Because there's no action that takes place. It's all about the scare. And when I started getting into looking at that, I realized very quickly that people have reported this Oz effect, where there's sudden no sound. Absolute quietness, and then suddenly there's a Bigfoot or a dogman or something you expect. But it's like the whole place becomes just dead silent. Now, what's happening under these circumstances is that it seems to be that there's an infrasonic sound happening. Now, we can't hear it, but all the birds and the insects do. And we have like that. If you just look at a famous scene from the Close Encounters movie, Steven Spielberg, when he sat in the truck and all of a sudden everything goes quiet. The insects, the crickets, woo. And this light comes woo down on top of him. It's as if when we say the surrounding areas are deadened of sound, there's a good possibility that infrasonic sound is being created. Right. The thing is with insects, they can hear it. If you get crickets, I mean, I've been to Arkansas a few times, and as I'm walking through grass, they'll suddenly go dead quiet and just will suddenly shut up because they're dead noisy. They really are noisy. They don't hear them because they are dead noisy. And what happens is, as you're walking through the grass, the blades of grass rub against your legs on your jeans and trousers. And what's happening? That actually creates an infrasonic sound. And the insects realize and go, oh, there's a predator nearby. Quiet, breathe. And they all go quiet. And once one lot goes quiet, it spreads. So before you know it, you're stood in a field where there's not a single cricket making any chirping. And then once one starts as a test, the others start to go in, and then eventually they all start going. And this is what's happening because the phenomena generates an infrasonic sound. It happens in the UFO stuff. It happens in the cryptid stuff, and it also happens in the paranormal. So there's something responsible for generating infrasonic sound. Problem for us is we don't hear it because we only hear from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. We're not hearing infrasonic sound. But insects, birds, and things around us are, and they'll tell us. They sometimes will give a clue and say, something's going on. And the phenomena is more associated with infrasonics than we even ever thought. But it's just like we don't hear it. And it's very hard, very, very difficult to find equipment which will measure infrasonic sound. If you do, it's a very, very expensive, special pieces of equipment. You can spend thousands of pounds on. But that's the best way of knowing. And we've done it. We've got pieces of equipment which will measure infrasonic, and we have recorded it and picked it up. We can't hear it with a naked ear, with the ear, of course. But the registration on the meter is there. And you try and find what is producing it. The phenomena is producing it, but there's varied phenomena: UFOs, paranormal, cryptids. And I thought to myself, that's real. That for me is very interesting because I'm finding all these connections between the two. Because we thought UFOs are, if they're coming from some distant planet across the universe, and the paranormal is a very old earthly phenomena, then why would the two have all these interesting things that they connect? Why would the two have the same thing? Some extraterrestrial thing from some other planet and paranormal phenomena. It seems that everything that's happening has these connections. And that's really interesting because there was recently a test carried out with an artificial intelligence computer. And over a period of 3 years, they kept feeding it information about UFOs and what people experience, be it missing time, alien abductions, the absence of noise, paralysis, all hundreds of different aspects to that. And then they did the same with the supernatural and the paranormal and the cryptids and everything. And they kept feeding this information into this artificial intelligent computer, so that after about 3 years of putting all this data in, they should be able to press the enter button and it would try and the program would try and conclude what was responsible for it, some information. And after 3 years of doing this on this advanced CRI system, they pressed this enter button, and it was very, very interesting, the conclusion, because it was very short and very sweet, but it was the implications of what it said. It was very interesting. It said it believed it was associated to a single source that has the capabilities of creating physiological constructs.
Wow.
What's that saying? It's saying that all the data that we put in, it's seen so many connections between the paranormal, the supernatural, the cryptids, the UFO, the paranormal, all these different things, that so many that the computers said there's one source.
Yeah.
There's one source that's responsible for it all.
Yeah.
And that one source can manipulate, it can change the mask of the phenomena. The phenomena can present itself in so many different ways. A Bigfoot, a poltergeist, a UFO alien, whatever.
Yeah.
But the source is the source, whatever that be. And physiological constructs. Now, I'm a physiological construct, you're a physiological construct. But isn't that what phenomena is like? It has a physiological construct, because we've talked to so many people who have experienced this phenomena, and they say it's physical. I touched it. It touched me. It's real. It left footprints. It did this. Those are physiological constructs. But when it says it can create them, it must mean also the fact is that they can also do the oppose. In other words, they simply just disappear. And if we're talking about physiological things that can appear and disappear, then that is the world of metaphysics. That means that 1 minute it's physical, the next minute it's not. And we have that in the UFOs, we have that in the paranormal, we have that in the cryptids. You know, we have these times when they're very physical and other times when they're not.
Yeah.
You know, so what is the source? If that is the case, and this computer's saying there's a source responsible for all this, then we have to start looking at about the investigation of it and saying to ourselves, well, hang on a second, you know, it's about time the paranormal guys do get in touch with the UFO guys now, because we've been compartmentalized for years and years, and we're never getting a full picture. But what happens when we start to bring all those things together? Picture starts creating. Hang on a second, you know, paralysis in alien abduction and paralysis during spirit phenomena in the bedroom. They're the same thing.
Yeah.
Exactly the same thing. It's happening. An apport of a mug took place in a poltergeist case in Morecambe about 15 years ago. The mug that disappeared for 90 minutes, disappeared from the kitchen worktop, was going to have a drink, it just vanished. It turned up some 90 odd minutes later in the most ridiculous location you could have found it. It was an apport. But what was good is that we could bench test it against another mug, which came from the same set, because there was 4 in a flat. At Christmas time, 4 mugs, just 4 white mugs, opened up and put in the cupboard. And of course, we had not only the apported mug, but we had another mug from the set. And to be honest, they were both 3.19 grams. They felt the weight, exactly the same in weight. Exactly, you wouldn't tell them apart. They felt the same, looked the same, weighed the same. But what we did, we took them away for analysis. What happened when we started removing the apports is that we got a sudden suppression in phenomena, just for a few days, because these witnesses were saying, "Oh God, it happens every night." And once we started to put the apport away, there was a sudden suppression for about 3 days.
Right.
And it's, what did you do? We didn't do anything. All we did is take the apport away. Sometimes phenomena will track the apport.
Yeah.
So it's always say it's best to take it to your own home, of course, you know, put it in your cupboard. But what if the apport is a way of tracking, is a way of delivering phenomena from the source? The source says, I know where I want phenomena to take place because I've left an apport there.
Yeah.
Boom. Yeah. But when we moved the apport, there was some confusion. It was like, where are we going to do it now?
Yeah.
It depends where the mug is, it's a different location. But then it kind of realizes, no, something's not right here. And then eventually goes back to the location where it originally came from. But in that time, it could be 2 or 3 days. So you get this 2 or 3 days respite of confusion that the phenomenon is kind of, it's like a quantum bridge, it's like an anchor.
Yeah.
Where the phenomenon gets delivered to.
Yeah.
So we start thinking on the very scientific terms. Let's break it down. Let's put it through analysis. And we did. We took the apported mug, we broke it down and crushed it up, and we did it through 3 different types of atomic analysis. Microscopy, they call it.
Right.
Yeah.
And it looked at it. Now, we had a scale effect. That scale effect, it says, for instance, this glass we were drinking, okay, it measures what it's made of. It looks at the properties it's made of. Okay, if it disappears and comes back 90 minutes later, we break it down and look at it again, and the information should tally up.
Right.
Should be exactly the same.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. On the scale effect, it would argue that this is not the thing it left. It's completely different. It looks the same, feels the same.
Yeah.
You can't tell any difference. But under the microscope, it's not the mug it left.
Wow.
It's replicated in some way. And the replication process has this diathermic reaction that takes place. And it looks completely different than the normal mug under the microscope. Completely different. It's like a mimic.
Right.
And what happens is, what was really interesting is that when we started to measure and look at the diathermic reactions in this mug, we thought, we've seen this somewhere before. Where have we seen it? It drove us mad. It took us ages, took us months. And when you get one of those bulb moments, it's just sat there, ding, it finally comes through. Because we're looking through all our paranormal files. It wasn't in our paranormal files. It was in our UFO files. So we go to UFO files, and there's an incident where a UFO suddenly appeared near to the ground. It was such a significant case. People came out to investigate it from MUFON and places like that. But what is interesting is that because it suddenly just manifested, this UFO close to the ground, it affected the plants. So the science guys come out and take cuttings of the plants because they look strange, something's happened to them. This UFO's done something to them. And they took it away and they created this report, and it was referred to as a biological traumatology report.
Right, yeah.
In there, diathermic reaction. The diathermic reaction was exactly the same as the diathermic reaction in the apported mug.
Right, yeah.
Another light bulb moment, that the sudden manifestation of a UFO and a sudden manifestation of a mug are using the very same physics. It's the same physics. The apport of the UFO, the apport of the mug, it's coming from some reality. It's utilizing the same physics. It's the evidence to the source.
Yeah.
So we started to realize, hang on a second, this is paranormal mechanics. This is how to break it down. We're taking that one step further. I'm going, I'm not just happy with a photo and a video and remarks. I want to break it down. What's causing it? A mechanism at play, an intelligent mechanism at play, especially regarding poltergeist. So we know that there's a connections, these more and more and more and more connections between all these things. And that is why this AI computer is turned around and said, it's like there's one source that's responsible for doing it all. Because there's too many connections to ignore.
Yeah.
That's what makes it very interesting. Now, the question has to be now is, what the hell is the source? What is the source that's interfering with us and our reality? What is that intelligence that puts forward paranormal, ufological, cryptid, all these strange things? Because there's something responsible. It likes to, of course, it can be deceptive. It can be represented, but we can change its. If we look at biblical days, it could be angels, it could be the jinn, it could be all sorts of different wonderful names and things, and appear to be, but occasionally they make mistakes.
Yeah.
Occasionally they make mistakes. They make mistakes in the paranormal. Sometimes you see an apparition and you think, okay, that's really, really interesting. The details, the information from the photograph, everything is just absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
Excellent. They make a silly mistake because that belt that they're wearing it wasn't manufactured for 30 years later. Well, it can't be. Hang on, it's an apparition of a Roman soldier, but the belt is not of its time.
Yeah.
So that's a bit strange. How can that happen? Well, they must have got the details wrong. And we thought that until we started getting more and more reports through that occasionally there's mistakes.
Yeah.
Certain carriages didn't have doors that open a certain way, phantom carriages. We found, for instance, that in the ufological case, that these entities were seen and the craft had portholes with rivets on.
Yeah.
Now, it's these are grey type beings, but the craft it's seemingly seen has got portholes and rivets. They don't use portholes. That's also from the 1980s. You got it wrong. Sometimes you don't get it right.
Yeah.
It's that mechanism that's at play. The perception of making themselves look a certain way sometimes just don't quite get it right sometimes.
Yeah.
And this is what's really interesting, is that what is the damn source? So we can see kind of now we're pushing forward rather than just experiencing this phenomenon.
Yeah.
Where it's coming from, why does it target certain people, certain places? What's happening in those areas? But most of all, what's the mechanism that's at play? Because there's science involved and there's an intelligence there. And we're just tearing it apart and looking at the tiny pieces of it now to say, okay, well, if an object moves from this to here in a poltergeist case, we just tend to register. We just say, okay, well, this object moved across the kitchen. Work. But for years and years and years, we were all doing that. And for some reason, people weren't measuring. And when we started to measure the distance between this mug in the kitchen moved from there to there, and we measured it. And then later on, or the next day, something else moves, and we measured that. We started to find that there's similar numbers. There's a mechanism that's at play. You know, that glass moved 39.6 inches. Something moved in the bathroom, 39.6 inches. Something else moved in the bedroom, 39.6 inches. And you think, hang on, there's a mechanism here. We never realised because we've all thought we were just random events. There's no random events. Everything is done purposely. Just as poltergeist can balance a butter knife on its edge.
Yeah.
You can find the microscopic balance points. Everything is just a mechanism.
Yeah.
And all we've got to do is start looking and breaking those down to start getting some answers. It's going to lie, I tell you now, from what we know, it's going to lie in the quantum field.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Other reality around us that we're completely unaware of, because we really are limited. I mean, of all the mammals on the planet, we are the most limited. You know, we get by pet cat, it's more handsome than us, you know, or a dog or anything. Any mammal is better than us in its perceptions. All we're limited is as if we've been dulled down, humanity, in a sense of reason. But there seems to be a mechanism at play, and that's where it gets exciting. And I think moving forward, that's where I think the best research lies, in breaking the phenomena down, trying to figure out how it ticks.
Yeah,
you know, that's the exciting, because the question is about you know what's the most interesting sort of things and aspects, exciting things. That for me it is. It's the study of paranormal mechanics.
Yes.
You know, that's the way of the future, I think. You know.
Excellent. Right, we're gonna have a quick 4-minute break.
Yep. And then we'll come back with some more.
Because we've got lots of questions.
Yes.
No problem. I'll have a cigarette.
Yeah. Me too.
See you all in a few minutes.
Talk to you shortly.
Bye.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
And we're back again.
Yes, we are. That was the quickest 4 minutes of my life.
I know it was, yeah.
Oh, you do when you hang on the counting.
Oh, is that? Oh, that went so fast. Oh, right. So we'll go straight in. Deb,
Yep.
do you want to read it? Do you want me to go?
Oh, I'll do it if I can find it. Right. This is a longish one from David. Hi, Steve. It has been reported that there has been many paranormal incidents at Winter Hill. Have you had any information of an underground base under the hill?
Not of an underground base, but I mean, it's David. That's that question. I mean, yeah, I can look out my window and see Windsor Hill. You know, that's how close I am. I see the transmission tower up there from my bedroom window. It's great.
Yeah.
People are here for a reason, you know. You know, so that's my observation platform. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes on around Winter Hill. It's an interesting place. It has been for a long time. I mean, if we go back to the days of the sort of the 1600s, late 1600s, there was a coven in Chorley, and this is at a time when witches were being outcast, you know, and even and killed and those sort of things. So they secretly were relocated up to the top of Winter Hill, which they lived up there for quite some time. So that coven operated up there for quite some time. Don't get me wrong, because there are paranormal things happen up there.
Yeah.
As well as other strange things. But it's mostly common for UFO phenomena. It's seen regularly. Now, I investigated one particular case of an incident where on one of the farms up there, Adams Farm, a cattle hand contacted me after witnessing a UFO that came close down over the cattle. And there isn't many cattle farms up there at the time.
No.
And caused quite a bit of a stir. And this guy was actually allegedly affected by this phenomenon. He came out in some type of rash or something. But what was interesting is that the following day, people turned up at that particular farm, claiming that they were from the Ministry of Agriculture and Foods. These were guys in suits, and they clearly wasn't. They clearly wasn't MAFF officials, but you know, farmers were scared of it. You know, more scared of MAFF officials than the Ministry of Defence.
Yeah.
Because these are the guys at the time, the MAFF, were responsible for shutting down farms. I mean, we can remember if we cast our minds back to the foot-mouth incidents that are happening, you know, they've still not been compensated. The government, the UK government said, we promise, you know, we have to come and kill 120 of your sheep or 50 of your cows, but don't worry, the government will compensate you. Never happened. They never did get compensation. It's a terrible, terrible thing. But they were fearful of the MAFF because these are the ones that came along and shut your farm down. You know, so these are the sort of guys that apparently turn up. I'm not interested in anything about the farm. They just want to talk to Mr. Murphy, who's the cattle hand who reported seeing the UFO.
Yeah.
These were clearly not MAFF officials. I mean, I talked with the MAFF, and they said, well, for a start, you know, we don't work on those particular days, and secondly, we wear clear identification. We don't wear suits. We clear identification with MAFF on the back of our yellow jackets. So it wasn't them, but it was enough to scare the cattle, the farmer who owned it, Mr. Watson, from talking about it. And we pressed him a lot.
Yeah.
His last remark was that he can't talk to us because he's been warned not to talk to us about this incident. But it's a very interesting incident took place up there. But it's not the only one. There was an incident from many years ago from an organisation known as DIGAP. It was the Direct Investigation Group of Aerial Phenomena, and it was run by a ufologist who took on this case, Arthur Tomlinson. Now, Arthur was based in Manchester, and he was quite well known with that organisation. And there was a UFO encounter up there that came close to a vehicle. That vehicle was a young girl driving home from work one night, and she lives in the area. And she goes over Winter Hill to take a shortcut. And she was followed by this object. It came very close to the vehicle. The following day, people turned up, claiming now they actually did show military defence badges.
Yeah.
But what she was confused about is that her father was a no-nonsense guy, very protective. And yet when these guys came to the door, the father let them in and
Right.
literally let them interrogate his daughter. And it just
Yeah.
didn't make any sense to her. My dad's not like that. He would absolutely have flipped.
Yeah.
But for some reason, his behaviour was just so submitting. And he
Yeah.
let them in, and he interrogated about what she saw, not to talk about what she's seen to anybody. But that poor girl over the next month or so started having some serious issues regarding her teeth. They were crumbling. And there was
Oh.
no kind of rational explanation why all the teeth were suddenly crumbling, the deficiency of calcium and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it came out the blue. But it was a very traumatic experience for her. There's been countless people that have seen UFOs up there. I've recorded a few on videotape myself up there,
Yeah.
as well as people reporting paranormal or even cryptids. Now, we had a case of strange animal deaths which were taking place up there with sheep.
Yeah.
And people reporting that they had seen some strange things up there. It's all quite well documented. I mean, I travel up there occasionally, and I take the truck up to the top there, up at Rivington, which again is a very strange place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the whole area is, especially at night, and it's just one of those hotspots for phenomena. And this doesn't just go back 10 years; it goes right back to the 1600s when the
Yeah.
colonies were up there.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something is imprinted into the land up there. And like I said earlier, these connections, if the coven was up there for so many years and practicing, certain acts and things,
Yeah.
then why would you have a UFO? Why is it a hotspot for UFO stuff as well? So he's got these connections again with the paranormal, the supernatural. It's in a very interesting location. The actual Rivington Pike looks to be artificial. The actual the hill, it does
Yeah.
look artificial. If you look at it under Google, on Google Earth, it looks artificial. I'm
Yeah.
not too sure what it is actually, but there's plenty of documentation regarding the mining that took place. There was lots of mining that took place up on Winter Hill,
Right.
coal mining and things like that. And I did one day I was walking through like a green field, and as far as I could see, it was just a flat green field, but it was very deceptive because all of a sudden the field went down and there's a railroad track, and then it went back up again. So from
Right.
the distance, you wouldn't see that railroad track. It just
No.
looks like a green field. But that railroad track just went into the hillside, and it was just blocked up, just completely blocked up. Now that would have been one of the old rail carts that used to go in to collect the coal and stuff
Yeah.
to get it out, because they would have had to get this out from the old railroad and then probably get it somewhere else. Into Bolton, maybe, or the top parts of Horwich. But there's a lot of history there as well. A lot of mining, a lot of history. I don't know about underground bases, but it's not the first time someone's asked me about that. It's not the first time someone's asked me, could there be some type of underground base there? We have to question why is so significant that location for sightings of all strange things.
Yeah.
It's an odd one, and I like to say, I purposely live. I can open my window in the morning, and the first thing I see is Winter Hill.
Yes.
That's done purposely.
Yeah. Can I just jump in on that quickly? Is that all right? Before I forget, because I know at Bolton Town Hall, these tunnels that go from under the town hall that go out in pretty much every direction.
Yeah.
So do you think it'd be possible that they go up towards Erich? Is it really?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of tunnels, because they were being utilised so much. The whole area, if we go back in time, was just a rabbit warren of tunnels everywhere, because the amount of mining that took place was on a real grand scale. In fact, if you go into Bolton, you can see on the outskirts of Bolton, you can still see some of the old coal carts which they put on display, from the old days.
Yeah.
But there seems to be a strong connection, geological connection, with ufology, and that also involves cave systems. A lot of cave systems.
Yeah.
There's a lot of strange things that do happen in caves or underground, and that's all. Interesting enough, that's the only one place that iron won't help you. You will not get the. If you go underground, as I say, you're underground and you have iron for protection or whatever, try and ward things off. It won't work. Absolutely, it won't work underground. Because like I say, there's incidents that have taken place where phenomena and whispers can lead you to your death if you're not careful. So, but it doesn't have any effects underground. It's like going back to the old days and saying, you know what, everything that the sun casts light on is our domain, and anything it doesn't is theirs. And there is something to that. There's definitely something to that, because I think a lot of phenomena has more geological connection than even the sky. I mean, we think, UFOs was always seen in the sky around this area.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's because it's the geology and something going on.
Yeah.
We have to start looking not just up, but thinking what's below us as well sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's a very interesting location.
The last time I was up Winter Hill, I was looking through is it Sonic's night vision binoculars?
Yes, they're good.
I watched two lights travelling together, and they suddenly went into one and then came back out and carried on. Like, what does that? Nothing does that.
It is a bit of a hotspot. I filmed stuff up there. A UFO in close proximity was more like plasma.
Yes.
And it just shrunk and went into itself. It collapsed. It just went, gone.
Yeah.
I have no idea what those things are. I think when we're talking about ufology, I think we have to split that now. We have to say, okay, there are structured craft, and there is light phenomena that seems to act intelligently. There's kind of two things.
Yeah.
Because recently there was a video that was sent that I managed to get her hands on, and it's from Afghanistan, of a military base, and it showed 4 of these objects in the sky, which are all flickering and beautiful ambery colours, dropping little things that seem to disappear, which have been reported so many times before in the UFO field. But in this occasion, they fired a missile and it hit 2 of them, and they completely disintegrated and then went back to normal, as if it never happened. They just reformed themselves and carried on. So it's like they're not physical in a sense, some of this phenomena, yet it's like plasma and it's intelligent. It does interact and react, with us. So it's difficult. Maybe are these living organisms or some living creatures or something? I don't know. But we can't wrap our heads around it. That's the problem. No. Physical craft, we can understand that. But people say, well, this light interacted with me, so it's got to be a light. It's around a craft, an orbit light around a structured craft. Not always. Sometimes you are dealing with an intelligent light phenomena. And we see that in the paranormal, don't we, all the time? It's always in the paranormal field normally, the balls of light. But we have the ball of light in the crop circles.
Yes.
The ball of light phenomena. We have the Foo Fighters from the balls of light seen in the sky following Second World War aircraft.
Yep.
When we bring them all in the same pot, we think, hang on a second, all these sort of things are similar sort of things. And again, the connectivity, back to the source. But, it's a wonderful location. I'm up there all the time, and a friend of mine who's a researcher called Chris Turner, he's done. He does a lot of documentaries on cryptids and stuff. Well, Chris works with me, so I know he's been up there and been looking into some of these strange animal deaths as well. I think he's putting a documentary together on it, actually.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yep. Right. Next question, which is from Blue Shift. Can you tell us about the bio boards you worked on? Now you can talk, since IBM dropped the info.
This is coming from somebody who's followed my work. Now this story goes back 29 years ago.
Right.
One of my jobs, when I left school, I went through a lot of training as an engineer. Electrical engineer, and telecommunications and electronics. And eventually, I found myself working with NATO, RAF Wethersfield in Essex, and I was called upon as a telecommunications officer type guy to sign 2 official secrets acts in regards to the installation of a new communication system at the base.
Right.
This consisted of very large racking systems and these computer boards, which were probably about the size of a computer board you get in your computer. Big one.
Yeah.
What was interesting on these motherboards, these big boards, was that there was no memory. I mean, when we look at inside computers, we can buy memory chips that we plug in.
Yeah.
The memory on these particular boards were plasma based, were biological plasma.
Right.
And because they were biological plasma, they were nicknamed bioboards because biological things on the boards. It was a combination of the electronics and biologics, which was working together. That was incredible. I mean, and this was a Marconi stroke NATO operation, which was an installation of these. And when you lock these into the cabinet, you get 2 lights that come on. I probably shouldn't tell you about that. I shouldn't tell you probably about the 2 lights, actually. But this communicates with satellites in orbit. And there were 4. For these 4 satellites in orbit were non-listed satellites. So they're clearly government satellites. National security ones. And they're huge. I mean, the span on the actual devices were probably about a football field in length. They were, the big antennas that come out from the side and the blades that are capturing the light from the sun. There was 4 unlisted ones of these, which these communications would communicate with the satellites. As soon as you plugged them in, there was a communication process between myself and those satellites, this system and the satellite, and they were automated. The satellite pings it back, and basically they both talk, they both pair and talk. And between the satellite and this system, communication was established. And then I'd move on to the next one, and the next one. And I worked on those for a few months, and it was under the heading of advanced communications. Now, I was thinking back at the time, wow, this is interesting because we're going to have all these in computers. These memory chips are biological, and it was like a pink liquid in a container. And I thought to myself, wow, this is really clever stuff. And 29 years later, it's still not out in the public field.
No,
this was advanced technology, and I thought it would be out. Oh, wow, this is going to be interesting. It's going to be out in the next year or so. It's going to be fascinating. And I'm still waiting now. And I wouldn't normally talk about it, but I mean, about a couple of years or so ago, I was fishing through the internet and I came across IBM making an announcement that they're going to be using plasma-based memory cells. And yet, since I've heard that on this thing, I've never seen them, not seen them come out yet. And yet it was featured in an article about plasma-based memory cells, and that's what I was working with 29 years ago, plasma-based memory cells. So I've been telling people since it's been put out there to the world, okay, well, I'll tell people plasma-based memory cells do exist, and I was working and installing them 29 years ago, coming on to 30 now. Real, and it just goes to show advanced technology is out there, and yet almost 30 years now it's still not out. So how long is it going to be before we see it? I mean, I've heard stories about all this, about it's advanced technology, and you don't tend to see it for 50 years or so. And I can hold my hands, I can vouch for saying, I believe it because I've seen it.
Yeah,
and that's why I signed in 2 official secrets acts, because I wasn't allowed to talk about it. I mean, I worked with 4 or 5 other guys in slightly doing different projects, but I wouldn't tell them what I'm working on, and they wouldn't tell me, and we weren't allowed, and we were we upheld that. There was a couple of times, I don't think they're in the forces anymore, but there was a couple of times when we'd have a little talk
discussion.
It happened. But this is how I got to find out that they were nicknamed bioboards, because I didn't name them that. But yeah, this is so I can imagine there's quite a lot of technology. I mean, That's just a small thing. I'm just a normal guy. I'm no scientist guy. I'm just a normal engineer asked to do a specific job, signed 2 official secrets, and I'm there. I'm doing this. Nothing spectacular. But yet, you think how much how much it could be covered up by specialists operations. This one's a mild one compared to what probably else is wonderful things that they might have in advanced technology. So yeah, I can talk about them now, but I'm still on the clock. I'm still waiting for them to come out, and they've not come out yet. And we are 29 and a half years on since that. And I don't know how, if that was brand new technology. It might have been, as far as I'm aware, it could be even older.
Yeah.
Clever stuff.
Very.
Very.
You're not kidding.
Like we said earlier, we know the little bit. It's the stuff that we don't know is just going to be totally mind blowing.
It's got to be. Yeah, it's got to be. And I believe now when people say there's specialized technology out there, it's not on the surface for 50 years or so. Fine, I believe them because I've dealt with stuff, and it's 30. We're up to 30 years now, and it's not out yet. I know IBM talked about releasing it, but did they get pulled back? I don't know. A couple of years or so ago, when I read that IBM is going to be releasing plasma cell memories, well, biological memories on the system, and it didn't happen. I'm not seeing anything out on it yet. Or did it just get sold to a military contractor?
Yeah.
Not to the public, So
I was just thinking that.
We're going to see inquiries in some of the PC world, but probably implemented for another further 10 years contract with a military application system somewhere.
Yep. They've swooped in. They've realised it's probably got a nefarious use, and they've swooped in and taken it.
There you go. Exactly. That does happen. Yeah. And sometimes it gets snatched away just when you think it's going to reach public domain. It gets snatched away and buried for another 10 years or something.
Yeah.
Well, very clever technology.
Very clever. Right, we've got another question from David. Hi, Steve. What do you think is going on at the military base at Sunnybridge in Wales?
I don't know. I've heard a lot of different rumours and stuff and things going on, but to put my finger on it, I haven't actually investigated it. It's I heard numerous different things. I probably actually, if I wanted to find out more, I'd probably talk with people more in the area, researchers in the area, try and find out a little bits and bobs for me. But I haven't really been following, unfortunately. Dave, it's not. I've heard about it and I've heard about some of the things, but I've not actually investigated any time into it, to be honest.
Right, that's fair enough.
Yep.
I always say, if you don't know, you don't know. This is a problem. A lot of researchers out there make me laugh. These big researchers in the US, you ask them a question, it's like, oh, I've got to know it. So rather than say I don't know, they make up this spiel, and then you look at it and you think afterwards, that's not true. You don't know, just
no point.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I've heard about it, but not too sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Are you doing it, or do you want me to go?
I thought we were taking it in turns.
All right, yeah. I don't know. It's just gone all over. All right. Nickname wants to know, would you join us to do a live investigation? And if you was to do, where would you like to go?
I don't do live investigations, and I'll tell you the reasons why.
Yeah.
It's because I get asked about so many times, I can't count, to be honest with you. Like, would I do that? Would I do those sort of things? Once I used to help out a lot with people, but once what happened is that you get people saying, well, why did you do it for them? Why did you do it for them? But what I tend to do is I do assist from the background. I do assist in regarding offering my skills and my, the people I know and regarding the aspects of research. I offer the analysis. I offer in-depth analysis at looking at different things for them, because I know it's hard to find, the people which are trustworthy, people that aren't going to charge you a fortune. I mean, I do this stuff for free, because I've got the contacts, I've got the know-how, and I know people that do analysis which want to know about this phenomena, believe it or not. So when it comes to photographic, audible, or other different forms of analysis, I offer assistance to anybody, it really needs some help in that matter. So I do things like from the background now rather than active.
Yeah.
I'm getting on. I'm getting old now. I mean, I've gone 40 years of all that, and I think I need to slow down a little bit. It's just because of the late nights and the early mornings and stuff. And I've got 4 businesses to run as well, so I just wouldn't have the time now. But occasionally, though, I always say to people, about telling them where's the best places to go to. What certain key locations to go to at those places, what experiments to conduct in those locations. And that's been very rewarding for people. So I kind of assist on the background more, in helping out rather than actively being there. But where would I go? If you want to know a good place, I don't know if you've been to Newstead Abbey. Have you been to Newstead Abbey?
No, I've heard of it.
Newstead Abbey lies in Nottingham, in the middle of Nottingham Forest.
We
all know the name Nottingham Forest. Newstead Abbey is it's a very large building which has a cloisters, and it has a tremendous amount of phenomena taking place there. And I don't say that lightly because I remember just one scenario where I was taking 2 boxes of equipment from one location to another, and they turned, some of them turned themselves on, and some of them went straight into alert modes and stuff in the case. I didn't even open the case. And I didn't even switch these damn things on. And there were parts of that building which were closed because when you talk to the staff, it's because it's unsafe because of the chairs that move across the room. So we talk to people, and we'll have to do that's perfect, perfect for us. But there's a lot of stuff going on at Newstead Abbey. If you can pay a visit there, it would be well worth it. Especially the cloisters in the middle of the night. It just goes round in a square. It's monks. It's just a hive of stuff going on there, and deep in history. And to be honest with you, it's like in the middle of nowhere. It's just like the forest, and it opens up, and you can get into, and it's a beautiful. If you want to Google it, it's a beautiful building, lots of history, well known for a very famous poet, of course, and the tales and the stories of a black mass with red eyes being seen, and stories like that. But yes, there's absolutely potent paranormal stuff going on there. And it's off the grid. It's not like let's go to the old same old. It's refreshing, it's new, and it's the grounds are also allegedly haunted as well, which people have reported. But the building, the cloister area, is the most potent, and I would be very surprised if you didn't experience something in there. Very surprised.
It's funny you should say that because we're actually doing a meet-up. 2 weeks today in Sherwood Forest.
You're not far then.
Is it?
You're not far.
The 11th. Is it the 11th
of June?
11th of June we're doing it.
Well, there's some strange stuff in the forest as well. I mean, I've done the investigation in Sherwood Forest. And I tell you, it was interesting because I did it with a chappie called Don Phillips, and he'd been there and filmed something very, very unusual. On the camera, you can see something which is popping itself out from behind a tree and looking at it and going back. And what was interesting is that this thing was lit up. It was caught it looks bright on the camera footage. But it's over 30, 40 feet away, so it's not caught in it's not caught in the infrared light, is it? Because when you put those lights on in infrared, you only see them person here. You start getting 10 foot away. Well, you can disappear into the blackness, don't they? Without using an IR extender, which he wasn't. This thing was emitting its own infrared. This thing, it was over 30 feet away, but it was emitting its own infrared, and it was hiding behind trees and watching and stuff. So I don't know what the hell that was.
Creepy.
Amazing piece of footage, but Sherwood it's a creepy location. I get it. Just make sure you don't get lost.
Yeah.
No, that'd be a good thing, because you can. It's very easily done, easily done. In that location itself, Sherwood is certainly got quite a few strange things that go on in the place. Yeah, it's got a lot of history there, a lot of depth, a lot of history.
I'll have to take my highlights, my night vision camera, I think. Why not?
Why not?
Strange
Right.
thing.
Next question is from Umbraman. Does Steve consider us to be part of the phenomena? If so, how does he think we fit into it?
We are part of everything. We are part and parcel of all the things we experience, because there's a connection between the observer and the phenomena. We know that, even paranormal cases, that phenomena rises to a point where we have the observer effect, where both parties, it's like that old question: is a house haunted if you're not there?
Yeah.
Well, we can say, okay, well, we have camera footage now, but can we truly believe it all?
Yeah.
If we say, okay, let's blanket monitor a house, let's take stuff in, let's set it up and see, without any human agencies, is there going to be phenomena there?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not done enough. There's not enough people, because most people want to be there. There's not enough tests that have ever been carried out to show that blanket monitoring is actually successful regarding the activation of phenomena. A lot more needs to be done. But I would suggest that, if it's a haunted location, then you would expect incidents of paranormal phenomena to take place if we're there or not. But believe it or not, and excuse the pun, but it's a grey area, that we do need to do more work in that field.
Yeah.
Because there's some evidence to point towards that the phenomena is derivative of our being there.
Yeah.
A witness to see it, and as an action that happens, because they're very resourceful phenomena sometimes, and tends to take place when people witness it, and tends to lie dormant until we're there again. There are people that they always say we see this, we see that, but that's when people are there. Most of the stuff that gets sent to me on cameras or blanket monitoring, I don't see enough success rate that phenomena is really taking place.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to mislead and hoax these things, because you can get things called magician string now, and it's thinner than fishing line, and you can tie around anything and move it off camera, and it looks like something's moving across, and you will never ever see it on camera. It's impossible on camera. And so I can never fully work out and say, okay, it's authentic. Now, if I know the people well enough, and say, okay, these guys aren't going to be doing that sort of stuff, then I can say, okay, yeah, there's some argument for it, but I don't see enough of it. The most stuff I'm experiencing, most stuff being reported, is from people's interactions with this phenomena, rather than not being on location. So I would say we are kind of part and parcel to it. Definitely poltergeist phenomena. It's not a rule book. There's the parapsychological departments and the scientific studies in psychical research. Those organizations used to write out as a rule of thumb that all poltergeist type disturbances are associated to a focus or a catalyst.
Yes.
Usually a girl more than a boy in some cases, usually going through adolescent.
Yeah.
But it's not written in stone, because we've done cases and we've relocated the family and still have poltergeist disturbance take place.
Yeah.
Yes, they are right by saying you have to take that on board, but it's not written in stone. Poltergeist disturbances can happen in locations where you have no catalyst and no focus. In fact, it can happen in a house where you just relocated the family for 3 days out of it to go live with family, and yet it still occurs. So we have to say, okay, yes, they're onto something, and yes, there's a lot of cases which do have the catalyst and the focus, but also there is something. There's an intelligent entity of some sort, and it doesn't fall under those categories. So not all poltergeist disturbances are that. Most of them might be, but not all of them. So it's not written in stone. And we know that obviously the more seemingly energy it's been captured in that location, the phenomena will react to.
Yeah.
And that's a partnership. It's a partnership program. It's like you have a connection. You're also part and parcel of that phenomena being generated because of your actions and the things you do in that environment. So yeah, we are very, very firmly connected with the phenomena, very much so.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's still arguments out there in the scientific field as to, are places really as haunted as they are when we're not there? It's a really interesting question, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
But I'd say, yeah, there is definitely a connection between, ourselves and the phenomena.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Next one is from Steve Trees. What does Steve think about the Penchurch incident?
Well, I know the person.
Yeah.
I know the people. I know the case extremely well.
Yeah.
And I've gone through as much as I possibly can. And now this is one case I can say I've actually looked into properly.
Yeah.
And I can say that is in an overwhelming amount of evidence to suggest something did happen. Even if you just take the witness, because in this case, I can take the witnesses out of this and still have a case.
Yeah.
Because there's documentation, there's reports on people, there's from in that location, so I can take these witnesses. Well, it's great when you can take the witnesses out and still have a case, because if you have, you've cracked it, and there's enough evidence. I'm happy to say and put my name to it to say something did happen. Something absolutely did happen. And I also looked at key things when she was originally questioned by other people and other witnesses. I look for key things which I'm keen to hear under same circumstances. And one of those things is that how the weather can be altered. It was just something so small as like, it was strange that the snow was only kind of falling in the places where phenomena happened, and I have seen that and I've heard of this before. And it's as if like the location where and the weather conditions acts adversely different from where places of phenomena has taken place and where it hasn't.
Yeah.
That was a real key interest to me because I investigated when Rendlesham Forest incident happened back in the 1980. I wasn't investigating Rendlesham. I didn't need to investigate the case. There was a buzz of hive of other investigators at the time dealing with that.
Yeah.
I investigated slightly afterwards the tree damages.
Yes.
Investigated the trees. That's what my job was. And the weather, because there's some strange weather came in, which caused the location to be sealed off from people. And then they came in and removed the trees and removed top layers of soil. And I just thought, isn't it coincidental how this storm just landed in these places, where phenomena were taking place? And when she said this, I thought that struck a chord with me. I thought that's interesting.
The strange snow.
Say that again. Sorry,
strange snow.
Yeah, strange snow. Exactly. I've heard it before. It's not the first time I've heard that. And everything what she said was, if I was talking about witnesses that will make stuff up, witnesses tend to, when they make stuff up, is go with the stereotypical stuff. This is not stereotypical. This is out. And it leads me to believe that, these elements, the truth coming out. And not just that, I've done work in, identification of deception and stuff like that, which is kind of part of criminal psychology.
Yeah.
And just by gestures, and you can tell when someone's reliving an event because they're kind of picturing in their own mind, and just key things I look for to say she's remembering. She's not telling an event; she's remembering an event.
Yeah.
And I can tell for things like that. I believe that incident did take place. I believe there was a cover-up. I believe that there's a lot of things that was going on there, and people were there pretending to be from other businesses and departments, and just to control the location. I know that goes on. And I believe her about her incident, and she's been fighting this. I know. Do you know what? I've heard other investigators out there saying, "Oh no, she's telling lies and this, that." And it's okay, anyone can say that. But to me, it's equally important to prove it.
Yes.
It's the same. If you go on a case and you can prove it to be a fake, then prove it. And if you can't, and you can prove it to be authentic, then show it.
Yeah.
Don't shout from the tops without evidence. You need evidence either side.
Of course you
And
do, yeah.
that's what frustrates me when people say, "Oh no, Kaz is lying," and da 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 da. And I look at what they've got to present, and they've got nothing. They've got nothing. Not done the homework.
Yeah.
And if you look through the whole case and do the homework, she's had to become a researcher and investigator herself.
Yeah.
That's how frustrated she's been with this.
Yep.
Yeah.
She's had to do.
The thing is, as well, why would you go, if you were telling a story of something that was made up, why the hell would you go to all the trouble of getting the Freedom of Information Acts?
Exactly.
Trying to find out about military exercises and stuff. You'd just leave it, wouldn't you? It'd be just something that happened. And
exactly. Because nobody was doing it really, and she needed answers. She wanted answers, and the best way to go about it was to do it herself. And good on her.
Yeah, exactly.
Good on her, because I'll tell you now, considering she wasn't trained as a UFO investigator, she's done a damn good job.
Yeah, yeah.
And she's done things that I would do, file for information and stuff, and ask questions, and that's what you got to do. She's done a great job. So I agree that I believe that experience is very authentic.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I just put that up. What Paul said, he agrees that strange weather phenomena is present before many events of high strangeness.
Absolutely right. It is. There's so much more is involved in this, in these incidents that take place, because it's as if like something can control an environment. It's beyond the norm.
Yeah.
I often think if this is just one great big plane table we're on.
Yeah.
Because the masters can seemingly change all sorts of things, and like Paul said, the strangest thing you'd never make the connection is about the weather. The preceding weather, the post weather is. You hear this all the time regarding these locations, and all of a sudden you can't get to the location because it's oh by the way, there was a flood, there was a storm, there's a whirlwind, there's a hurricane in places where you'd never get them.
No.
Yeah.
All of a sudden they come out from nowhere and just cause problematics in regarding the events. It's like something that covers up the scene in a quick fashion.
Yeah.
And it becomes problematic. It's like something covering its tail, its tracks, and you tend to know after a while that that's not normal. There's something at play here. And if it wasn't for countless times it doing that, we wouldn't recognize it. We just think it was just some freak storm.
Yeah.
But no, there's definitely something at play on some of these occasions. He's absolutely
Right, next question is from Umbraman. What does Steve think of Admiral Byrd's account of UFO and inner Earth giant hominids with extreme technology?
It's a bit of both, actually. I mean, we know that obviously Admiral Byrd was involved. You know that it was the largest naval force operation that took place. I've got some of the diary logs, not all of it, some of it. I've got the photographs and stuff because they had to land on a certain location. They brought a plane in, and I've got photographs of that site, that location and stuff. The story is interesting, but the story is said to be accountable through the diary of events.
Yeah.
But nobody seems to know where the diary of events is. There's lots of rumors and stories to it, but I want to see the diary of events. I can see diary events on this day. We set forth to go to this position, longitude and latitude. This is where we're going to set up a base camp. This is where we're going to be staying for the next 2 days. This is what's going to happen. I can read this from the diary logs, but when it gets to the juicy gossip stuff, I'm thinking, where's the information? Because there's lots of people saying, "Oh yeah, he wrote it in his diary." Where is it? And I can't get it. I can't find it. I can't find someone who's got it. It's like a really good story, but when you start digging, it starts to get weaker and weaker and weaker in regarding it. Now, it's a fascinating story, and those stories are gold. But you've got to also look at the times of when stories are told, and if they match certain films, for instance, and certain books of inner Earth, because the whole thing about inner Earth is a very ancient thing, believe it or not.
Yeah.
People know for a long, long, long time. But there are some interesting things. But is it enough? And then they try to attribute a particular photograph of a big hole that was seen over Antarctic, which was taken by satellite. Well, the big hole is part of the equipment it's taking the photograph. It's just a ring in the middle of the camera. So because the photograph is designed to take a ring of photo,
Right. Yeah.
black part in the middle is part of the equipment. And people thought, oh, that black hole is the hole. And that got connected to it. And it gets very, very messy. We do know he was there. We do know there was a massive naval operation. We also know that we never really got a satisfactory explanation as to why such a big naval force was used. That would never happen now.
Yeah.
Because if you send that amount of naval force to Antarctica and leave America very, very vulnerable. That's how much naval force they took there. So, yeah, it's questionable as to reasons why they did with Project High Jump and stuff, but trying to find those little picky details about, did he experience Greenland? Did they see a mammoth? Did they have did they witness something? Was his plane overtaken by, the controls of the aircraft was overtaken by two crafts which were near him, which brought him to the ground, and they had this communication with these people that told him things about the future and da 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 da. It's a wonderful story, but as soon as you get to that area, there's no evidence. I've not found any evidence. Wonderful stories. The evidence lies prior to it, just prior to the incident, about all the locations he visited, all the documentation is there.
Yeah.
Points where they stayed and had to land due to storms and other things like that. Because there's only certain times you could fly that aircraft in the distance. So I know that's there. So I really have to have more evidence to say that there's some elements of truth to it, because everybody says, "Oh, there is these diaries," but no. And I say, "Well, where are they?" Well, I don't know. I don't even know if they exist. Like goes a flat tire straight away,
Yeah.
I don't know, to be honest, but they always say it's a massive operation, and I don't know what that was for. To be honest with you,
I read his stepson's, was it stepson or his son's book, supposed to be based on his diaries. That was absolutely fascinating. But like you said, the original diaries would be better.
What you should have done is you put in the book the details to show the diary.
Yeah.
Show photographs of the diary in the book. I read it. I looked at it, and I thought, well, if you've got it, why didn't you put it in? Because that's what I do. Be a bestseller.
Exactly. Yeah.
But no, there isn't. And this is the problem with this. What's in the diary, what isn't in the diary, and how much we can make up. What could it be, and what couldn't it be? And I'll say the obvious thing is here, if you've got the events from the diary and you're doing a book from them, put them in the book. It proves it.
All you have to do is put pages through, don't you? It's
Yeah, I would put it in.
Show the whole diary, just the page that relates to what he's telling you about would be enough.
I would have put it in with a bestseller and put it in evidence.
Sorry, I was just throwing that up for Paul quickly.
Yes.
Yeah, for next week.
Get me moderating fingers.
Yeah, he's not done the last 2 weeks, so.
Oh, that's good news.
Yeah. So hopefully he'll be back on. Right.
Paul's going to be lecturing at one of our event in Blackpool June 24th to 26th, and bringing some of his research forward. It's interesting. It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I can't get to that sadly, but
we've got next year, August of next year, back in Manchester again as normal. If everything stays okay, we'll be back in the normal place.
Super.
Yep.
Right, last couple of questions.
Yeah, so you've kind of just covered this, but I'll go with it anyway. Nickname, what do you know about Antarctica?
I know a few bits about Antarctica. I mean, it's one of those international free zones where, there's different countries which are doing different tasks there. And there are several different sites there which are the kind of compartmentalized areas, that China has research there, Russia has one, we've got one, the US have one. And there are different countries doing different types of testing there because it's a unique location for doing tests, because they're always doing, and they are always doing tests. I mean, they're digging up ice from the bedrock now, which is millions of years old, and they're finding that there's bacteria, frozen bacteria in it. But when they thaw it out and heat it up, that bacteria comes to life.
Yeah.
As if it's been in some type of stasis. Now, this stasis is the problem because we don't know what type of bacteria would have been around on Earth back in those days. And it could be biohazard. It could be. So they're looking at all these things, these ancient diseases and things, maybe.
Yeah.
So and it's very fascinating for them. I know that there's been several occasions where they found microbiological life there, which hasn't been found anywhere else like that on Earth, not at this time anyway.
Yeah.
And of course, the location would have been at some point a tropical location.
Yes.
Yeah.
So. But the problem is, we're looking sometimes 10 miles deep of ice.
Right.
Miles of it. I mean, you just can't reach 10 miles deep. It's just even when we're drilling oil now, it's not 10 miles. It's because I think the deepest trench, Mariana Trench, is only 7.5 miles deep, and that's the deepest one in the whole world. So there's a lot probably could be down there, and a great thaw eventually will happen, and about revealing more and more secrets. From a time when it could have been inhabited by different forms of life. So there's lots of great stories there. I mean, I love the one about the Antarctic pyramid. I mean, it's not a pyramid. It's a very specific type of mountain, which looked very pyramidic shape and covered a lot of snow. Everybody said, "Oh yeah, Antarctic pyramid." I don't believe that. I just don't believe it's an Antarctic pyramid. There are stories, all the research I've talked about, where people come forward. Yes, I used to be an officer in the army, and I was an underground base there. But I don't get the evidence. I don't get the wonderful stories. Who are these guys? Who are these guys that say, "Oh yes, I was an officer here, and I'm an officer there, and I did this"? Who are they? Oh, I can't tell you the top secret. I can't. Well, what's the point of telling us then?
Exactly.
It's a great bloody story. Don't get me wrong. It's like come straight out of a Stargate film, or a TV show. But I've got to look at the evidence, and I'm never satisfied.
You've got a backup for it, haven't you?
Don't listen to stories because sometimes elements of them. But when people keep pushing that same information out over periods of time, and you just have to question, why not come forward and say who you are, what's your rank, what's your number, what was you doing now? You're retired now. What have you got to? Oh, I can't talk about it. What are you talking about then? I mean, it's just. I give half the story. I won't give any story if you can't talk about it.
Either do or don't.
Exactly. But you know what? There's lots of fascinating stories about the place, and we do know the UFO phenomenon is hypervasive, and it likes to be in locations away from us on many occasions. About the business. And it would be an ideal place. It would be an ideal place for things like that. So anything's happening. But why did they need to go to Antarctica? Why to travel so far to Antarctica when all they have to do is go underneath the water for a mile? You're completely out of sight. Nobody's going to get over them. Nobody's going to be able to reach them. It's the oceans you should be thinking about, not the land. It's so easy. All you got to do is go out half a mile and go down, and that's it. They're gone. You're not going to get them on radar. You can't see them, not visible. We don't know what they're doing. They seem to have the capabilities of traversing the waters just as much as land anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like I say, if there's any bases, I'd say they're probably underwater, because that's probably the safest bet. Anything that's land, we can drill, blast, blow, or we'll reach it eventually. But see? I don't think these things can travel in space, and the huge amounts of gravitational forces, the bottom of the oceans are walking the pond. It's just nothing. So I'd say the water's probably more common. Yeah, but interesting place, Antarctica, nevertheless.
Oh yeah, definitely. Next question, Joe Weeks says, "Have you had any visits from MIB, Steve?"
I didn't, but my dad did.
Really?
Well. I won't send him MIB after the government officials. When my father was working at British Telecom, he was quite a high-ranking guy. He was a clerk of work, so it was his job to make sure that places were available for certain things to be carried out. One of those things was Project Homek, and HOMEC was the Home Office Monitoring of Electronic Communications.
Yeah.
It's, in other words, is that when you're on your phone and talking to, say, me, for an example, and you say key words such as bomb, or president in the same line, these computers at the Home Office are going to suddenly start recording you. And they'll record that conversation, and then later on it'll be looked at by an agent who will consider if you're a threat or not.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, for terror reasons, you can understand that. But it also works for if you said the word UFO and London. So it has, it was kept very quiet, Helmet, because, apparently they didn't want to give too much rise to it because it is pretty illegal, really. Ease tapping and even men with Hill and National Security Agency were taken to court for eavesdropping, and all that. And he had to open up the places when these guys came in to install, the military guys came in and installed these things, government guys, and say nothing more about it, to be honest with you. But there was one occasion when he was back in the day when it was analog and not digital. We were just getting into the digital stuff. So what the engineers used to do in the early hours of the morning, usually 3 or 4 o'clock, they go onto your telephone line, hear that it's dead, and do the switch over. In other words, they'd unplug you and put you onto a new service connection, which would be the digital process. Your old analog on then. But they tend to do this early hours of the morning because, people aren't much on the phones early hours of the morning, so it was a good time to do it.
Yeah.
On this particular occasion, he went to he picked up a phone, and there was a conversation going on. And the conversation was with a guy who worked at RAF Sealand. Now, that's the RAF base you used to go past on the way to Wales. So on your left-hand side.
Yes.
And he used to have like an aircraft there, on a stand thing, but they've moved that now. But when this happened in the early 80s, that was very much an active base. It was actually an Anglo-American facility. It was owned by American and British. We wasn't told too much in the early 80s of what was going on at that place. But there was a guy from there who was talking to somebody else about what we believe was about an aircraft.
Yeah.
But the reference Black Manta was used in the conversation. Now, years on, we know that Black Manta was, in fact, a TR-3A. Prior to the building the largest TR-3B, 60 meter jobby, and it was supposed to be an experimental aircraft. It didn't exist, but the conversation around this suggests that it did.
Yeah.
And it was, and what we did, I couldn't believe it, was that this was done over an unsecured line through British Telecom, as if like a normal conversation early hours. And what happened is that the people on the phone realised, due to a number of bleeps, that somebody else was on the phone, and it was the BT's engineers.
Yeah.
And of course, the following day, my dad goes back. He just put the phone back down, let them carry on. Next day, he goes into work. The first thing that happens is that one of the guys comes up, a manager, and says, "The boss wants you up in his room." And he said, "Oh, he wants to see me?" And he said, "Yeah, he wants to see you." So he goes up there, and his boss, the big guy, the big area manager's in there. His office has been completely commandeered by these 4 guys in suits from the Ministry of Defence, showed even the badges.
Yeah.
And in an interrogative way, got me dad to sit down, 2 people behind him, a couple in front of him, asking questions about this incident had happened. And he said, and he just played dumb. He thought himself, maybe I heard something I shouldn't have heard. I just,
Yeah.
And he just said, I don't know. I don't know. There's something on my lap. I put it back down. And what did you hear? I didn't hear anything. Are you sure? He said, what do you mean? I mean, yeah, I didn't hear it. I just heard that there was noise on there. And put it down.
Came out of the call, yeah.
And he said, well, you're very concerned about what he might have heard. So he said, okay, so we won't mind if we take you to your house. And he said, yeah, fine. Can I let my wife know? And he said, no, you weren't allowed to ring them. So they put him in the car, large car. I think it was a Mercedes or something. There was one either side of him, and 2 in the front. And they're driving, they knew where he lived. So they're driving straight to the house. Not allowed to tell my mum they're on the way. But on the way there, they were asking him, saying, look, you need to just come clean with us and tell us what you know, what you've heard. And he clever guy, my dad. He was looking around the car, could see a few little wires around. So they knew that there were recording devices in the car. It wasn't that. He was a very top engineer. And he just said, I don't know. I don't know nothing about anything. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just doing my job. And I didn't listen in. There was at least 6 and 7 seconds or something of that interruption. And you can hear a lot of words in 6 or 7 seconds. And he said, I wasn't listening. I just listened to some, and he was just diverting him every other time. Anyway, he got to the house. My mum opened the door, mouth agape, wondering what the hell's going on. My dad says, just let him in, just let him in. They came into the house, turned it upside down. They took the old phones? They took the phone apart like an old, like an old FBI, like Mission Impossible.
On the handpiece.
And we're looking for bugs and whatnot. They turned drawers upside down. They even took out remotes and took batteries out. Look in the back of them. What the hell? And it came to my dad's cupboard. Now, my dad's cupboard. My dad was a bit like me, because I kind of, I got into the subject with my dad. And he had some old books on UFOs. Brad Steiger's Inside the Flying Saucer, Erich von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods, and all those oldies.
Yeah.
After literally turning the house upside down, the only thing they took away with them was my dad's UFO books. Because before taking them, they got them, they flicked them upside down like this to see if any pieces of
right.
Secret notes.
What do you think you were, I mean, all this just because you might have overheard something. But he did. My dad did overheard the words about the talk of something known as Black Manta. And that is an experimental aircraft that they've always denied they ever had. Yeah. Because it has anti-gravity properties. It has capabilities of hovering.
Yeah.
And, and they've always argued there was never any existence of it. But why 2 people, one of them from an RAF base with somebody else, I don't know who the hell the other person was, talking about that? Yeah. Anyway, they thanked me down. They said, look, thank you for all your cooperation. We'll return the books to you in due course. And they did. They did send the books back about a few weeks later, and they just got a little thing saying thank you for your cooperation. And that was the end of that. But the next day, though, to turn up there at work ready for him, they were straight on it. There's obviously high maximum security there.
Oh, yeah. Just
certainly some concern as to what you might have heard,
Mm-hmm.
So I won't say it's men in black, but there's certainly men in suits. And they're Ministry of Defence guys. There was 4 of them.
Yeah.
And my dad realised there and then, after, we talk about it now, and we said, bloody hell, you must have overheard something that they didn't want you to overhear.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I won't like to be that guy that made that phone call, because he would have been securely reprimanded, because to have a sensitive conversation on a non-secure line.
Yeah, exactly.
That's early hours of the morning, but just by chance, someone's jumped on the line to thinking that it was empty.
Yeah.
So somebody's heads or somebody's knuckles have got wrapped for that. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
That's not the news that come to me black though.
Yeah. Right, next question. We've got 2 left. How much does Steve think IBM are involved with the phenomena and government and private contracts? That's from Umbraman.
Well, there's a lot of private contractors, so much so that they're even the names are private, who are involved in these, especially defence contractors. Because what happens is that we might have some exotic piece of equipment we want manufacturing, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to have one defence contractor make the buttons for me, another defence contractor do this bit and this bit. So they haven't got a clue what they're actually working on, to be honest with you. And you might have something up to like 30 or 40 different defence contractors working on one piece. And it all comes back together. Because that's done purposely to make sure that compartmentalisation works, and nobody can put 2 and 2 together and work out exactly what this is. There's a lot of that. But the problem now is there's so much of it. is that it's getting difficult to control. And if you just look at, for instance, defence contractors that are associated with the Space Force, the newly assigned Space Force, so many defence contractors. I mean, Space Force comes around to legitimise because it's already been going on for so many years. You know, I mean, I think I read the first one was in 1965. You know, it was just part of Project Blue Fly. Project Blue. There was three of them: Project Blue Fly, Project Moondust, and Project Gemini. And this was to shoot them out bring them down. Secondly, was the retrieval. Third program was the to see if you could be back engineered right back to an Air Force base. So that would have been the Gemini program. Now those works all closely hand in hand with a weaponized satellite from 1965 that was launched by an Air Force general. So they've been doing it since then, but unofficially weaponizing space. But it comes to a point where you're involving so many defense contractors, people are eventually going to leak and start. It's not going to be a controllable situation anymore. People are going to talk. There's so many involved. So what they do is they eventually file for the existence officially of Space Force, and that's what they did. They're telling us it exists. You know, they're telling us that Space Force is now been created because they can't keep a lid on its existence for the last God knows how many years. It's getting out of hand. So the way out of that is to legitimize it, to make it official. And they have done. They said, you know, Trump came in and said, we now have Space Force, which is part of the Air Force. It's another brand. We have another complete section now called Space Force. And he had to do so because they're already working on that, have been for a long, long time. It's a matter of, you know, they never tell us at the time. They'll tell us when they have to tell us. Things control. And that is because the amount of defence contractors which are being privy to some of this stuff is in the thousands. It's in the multiple thousands worldwide. And it's getting difficult to control. So you end up legitimizing stuff slowly but surely. But yes, there are lots and lots of programs out there, stuff that's going on, and they're going to keep. They're not going to say anything to these people because, for instance, you know, if you're American, you're going to get $10,000 fined.
Yeah,
I've only spent 10 years. The 10-10 they call it, $10,000 fine, 10 years in prison. You're not going to do it. You're just not going to open your mouth. You won't risk it. You know? No. And they don't. Maybe when they actually come out of that work, maybe they might do that, you know. But they're good at keeping people quiet. The 10-10 works very well, probably.
Yeah.
Right. Well, last question is from our Lee Roscoe, and it is: can you ask Steve what's the most energy he's felt in his body on a case?
That would be in Seattle, and that would be an entity that was being communicated for quite some time, communication entity, which ended up as a demonstration of a direct voice phenomena. But the amount of energy that came from this buckled me. I was on my knees. It absolutely hammered me, this thing. I heard that it was a female's voice. It was a beautiful voice, don't get me wrong, it was angelic. But the power that this thing had literally down to the floor, really, and I was struggling to breathe. I mean, I couldn't talk. It was very strange. I don't know what this thing was. I don't know if it was I don't know. I mean, it's easy to think like something very, very good. You know, it's angelic or something like that. But then you just don't know because, you know, even the darkest things can portray themselves as the lightest things you can experience. So I really don't know. But it buckled me up. It forced me to my knees. It took me breath. And I couldn't even talk about it. I couldn't talk about that experience for a good year without just being so emotional about it. It really, it really did affect me. But I can talk about it now. I mean, was an inexplicable feeling of, like I say, it's so hard to put into words. It's a feeling I've never had before.
Yeah.
So there's no feeling, there's no name for it because I haven't had it. If I had to round it up, it's euphoric.
Yes.
It's beyond your limitations of your emotions to accept it. You know, it takes you into a place there you cannot identify the emotion because it is just so powerful.
Yeah.
And I believe now I was looking to experience it. At the time, I was like, what the hell? But it happened in Seattle in regarding an investigation and regarding an entity that was portraying itself as an angelic being. And I wasn't a strong believer in angelic beings, you know, and I don't really even know now if it, if that's exactly what the situation was or if it was something else.
Yeah.
But what I can say is that whatever, it was a beautiful female voice, and at exactly the same time, I heard this directed voice at me from the air. I was gone. I was on the floor. My legs had gone. And I was just curled up on my knees, trying to breathe, trying to understand the feeling I had. And I struggled to talk about that for a long time. I couldn't do it without being emotional. And it was absolutely profound. Now, don't get me wrong. Also, it is the most profound. A tree there, which was completely. I can only describe it as there was definitely some form of very, very dark or demonic or whatever it is going on around this tree, which was, the tree was situated in a mortuary where a mortuary once stood, and had become the product hundreds of years ago to sacrifice and in children and terrible things, and that was the same case where this angelic being, if that's what it is, can come to play. But when I heard the vocals coming from the dark stuff, it was aggressive, it was shouting, it was demanding. It was very nasty things which were being said. And quite the opposite, actually, to this other experience I had. But it's funny that I had that experience on the same case. You could say the darker side, the good side, whatever. But yeah, it was. I've never had it before. Only had it once. Don't know if I want to have it again. Be honest with you. Even though it's euphoric, it's not a good experience because it's frightening, and you feel like you're completely, something's got a hold of you that you can't do anything. It's like you're squeezed under a grip of something which has got so much power. You feel insignificant. You can't do nothing about it until it relinquishes you. So yeah, I'd say it was that incident. That's one. It's the only one really. Because I don't quiver often, but that particular one. I mean, I couldn't even stand up. I mean, I was just buckled with this energy. And it was tremendous. I've never felt anything like it. And it's very, very difficult to explain. But is that
what the book The House of Fires and Whispers is about?
Well, the books around. You see, the thing is, we were told that we had to go to that investigation.
Right.
In a place in Seattle. Now it's like me saying to you now, you're around a seance table doing experiments, and whatever these things are suddenly turns around to you and says, for example, you're going to be in a district of Zimbabwe,
right,
in 18 months' time, and you think to yourself, what an absolute load of tripe.
Yeah.
Because you think so, well, you know, I'm going to go to Zimbabwe. I'm going to be in Zimbabwe in 2 months' time. And then you find out yourself you are in Zimbabwe in 18 months.
Yeah.
And the reasons why you're there is because of this incident that's taking place at this house.
Yeah.
That's how it worked out in Seattle. In fact, they told us twice about things in the future.
Yeah.
Right.
But the house was having, though it was having extremely bad paranormal occurrences, the fault of the matter was that wasn't the reasons why we were there, and we didn't even know.
Right.
The reasons why we were there was far and far darker, because we were there in regarding the disturbances around this tree in
Right.
this location where this, these things had gone on, and the association of another, what we might have thought was initially spirit, wasn't, or may have been something else. And be honest though, it worked, you know. I mean, apparently, what we were involved in, we were puppets.
Yeah.
So there were two things going on from either side, and just using us as puppets.
Yeah.
That's what happened. We got used as puppets, and we experienced the darker side. We experienced another side, you know, and that's the one that I experienced. I mean, I experienced both, but the other one was, you know, was literally, you know, that was a hell of an experience.
Yeah.
But it is part and parcel. The House of Fire Whispers concentrates on the investigation of the house.
Right.
Though that might be little references in there about going to this location and something to do with this tree, it doesn't expand into it because we just said between ourselves, we can't talk about this.
Yeah.
We can't. Nobody will get it. Nobody will believe us. Nobody will understand it.
No.
You know, how we've been manipulated over 18 months to this incident
This point.
by these two parties, which seemingly are fracturing against each other. And I just thought, I can't ever explain that to people. They've never. Let's just write the investigation of the house, you know. And we did, you know. Though even though it was a fascinating case and was definitely worthy of an investigation. Poltergeist and the paranormal stuff there, but it wasn't the underlying reason why we were there.
Yeah.
You know, we were puppets on a string to this phenomena.
Yes.
And they had already made the plans, apparently, because he told us we were going to be there. So they already knew we were going to be there. You have a see the future or something. I don't know.
Mad, isn't it?
Yeah, very.
Twice they offered this. Twice they told us where we were going to be, what was going to be happening, and twice they were right. So we know that phenomena, whatever is communicating with us, has the capabilities of looking at least 18 months into the future, at least, because we know it, because he told us, and we just laughed at it. We thought, you know, and then how it unfolded, I just couldn't believe it. It came from nowhere, out of the blue.
Yeah.
You know, and everything fell in place perfectly. You know, so
brilliant.
It's a very, very weird world.
Yeah.
Very weird.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Really do appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't talk about it often, you know, because, but yeah, I'm truthful. That's the experience I had.
Yeah.
I don't know what to make of it, but it was it's so hard to explain that energy.
Yeah.
It's something that you feel throughout the whole body.
Yeah.
You know, and it's very, very difficult to explain.
Yeah.
I once came close to it once when I was in. I went into Liverpool Cathedral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as I went in, they had a choir in there, and something overcome me.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was, what I went past, or what was there, or whatever. But it was like that, but 1,000 times amplified.
Right.
You know, and so I don't know if it is. It is as simple that there is good and bad, or angelic and evil ones. I really don't know, because I just don't know what you're dealing with really at the end of the day. You know, can only take their word for it. But
it's definitely something.
Yeah, it was a hell of an experience. It's going to last me for the rest of my life. That, to be honest with you. I don't want it again. I wouldn't want it again.
No.
No.
No, you know, if it is, if people say I've had an angelic encounter and I've had this overwhelming feeling, and you think to yourself, okay, yeah, it's psychological, whatever. If that is what I had, then there's some substance to it. If that's what it is, but then I don't know. I mean, is it just a phenomenon that can play with us and make us think something's angelic, and it's just what they do. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know. There are people that have had spirit around them, and they said, "Oh yes, I've been communicating with this my spirit guide for 27 years,
Yeah.
and he told me where he lived and told me what he did and that." And eventually, one day, this guy goes to find out a little bit of research. Turns out he never existed. He
Yeah.
wasn't a teacher. He wasn't his name. He never lived there.
Yeah.
And I really realised that they've been deceived and for
Manipulated.
7 years.
Yeah.
And it's like, does time not exist for them? 27 years for a practical joke's pretty sad, isn't it?
Oh,
It is
yeah.
really, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and they'll go to great lengths, you know. So it's massive trust, and
Yeah.
you know, like I say though, it's that's the main experience I had, which I'll probably never forget. I mean, I've had a lot of experiences, you know, but
That's the main one.
that one's the main one, yeah.
Right. Well, that's perfect timing. So it's going to bring us to an end now. Thank you so much for coming on
Thanks,
again.
Dave.
Really do
No,
appreciate it.
thanks, Andy. Yeah, it's been fun. I like to, you know, I mean, when I'm talking, I don't often talk about these things because I don't get asked them.
Yeah.
Um,
And we like to hear them.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
yeah. Oh well, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on, and
Thank you for
you
being
know, give me a shout in the future, and we'll catch up again.
Same time again next year.
No problem.
No, I'll keep in touch with you and sort something
Yeah, keep
out.
in touch, guys, and we'll sort something else out.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
Brilliant. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
guys.
So, thanks a lot. Cheers, Steve.
Thanks.
Right.
See you later.
So we're not on next Friday.
No.
We're on next Wednesday when we've got
People on.
Michael Kopf.
Michael Kopf, yes.
Yeah, so he's on Wednesday. Then the week after we've got Sean back.
Yeah.
The following Wednesday, and then we've got Lon.
Part 2.
So we've got Michael, Sean, and then Lon.
Yeah.
So, and that's it. And because we're nearly at 3 hours, I really am going to have to go before I get
Me too. Starving.
So thank you everyone for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
See you all next Wednesday.
You will.
Take care and
Take care.
don't
Be afraid.
Ooh.